to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Everybody, how you doing? I'm so excited for tonight. I'm so excited. So, wow, this was a last minute thing. We pulled this one, like out of our pockets, like Steve and I usually do. Steve, are you there, darling? He's hiding behind the mask and the top hat. I think he's there.
There we are.
There he is.
Forgot to start my camera.
It's magic. Hey!
Sorry to play. Please deposit 25 cents for the next 3 minutes.
Did you put the coin in the slot there, Steve? Good.
Swiped my credit card.
Woo! We've got some stuff. Boy, I'll tell you what. Last night, I wish you'd been here because we were doing gemstones. I had friend Anna Brandy Mart on, and she's a wonderful medium. She does tarot cards. She does it like she's not used to talking on the video, so I said, you come on and I'll talk to you, pass out. She says, listen, don't worry about it. We got it. Because we were talking about how to cleanse yourself, how to empower yourself, how to use gemstones, ward off negativity, anxiety. Okay. That's perfect. And then we talked about grounding and some meditations. We put meditations in the description and everything for everybody. We had a good time, but I know you know gemstones, so
yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that.
Cool.
As I didn't catch your show last night, unfortunately, but last night on my midnight show,
right,
we were talking about conspiracy theories, and I got into the gemstone files, which if you've ever studied any of that stuff, it was a bunch of files released by secret agents within the government or outside the government that detailed some of the conspiracies going on all the way back to Barbarian Illuminati, and each of the different files were named after different gemstones. So that's funny that we independently had shows about gemstones, but different kinds of gemstones.
Go figure, Steve. I'm here to tell you. But you know what? We had a really good time. She stayed, I think we're almost pretty near 2 hours, because she took questions from the chat. She read cards on 3 of the people. But this is one of the big reasons I pulled it up. One, I want to get your opinion on a couple of gemstones for that. Right there, that very thing, ward off negativity and anxiety.
We got obsidian. That's my go-to. Yep. Mm-hmm. Wear that around my neck. It's got an evil eye carved in it to ward off the evil eye.
I've got it. I've got obsidian. This is the cross that Spirit gave me. Can you see that cross?
That's the one from Gettysburg, isn't it?
That's the one from Gettysburg. That's the one right there. So I took time and wanted to pick the right stone. So I picked black agate and onyx and obsidian, all the way through, in sterling silver to put through. And I wear that all the time. But that's one. And amethyst, of course. That's this hand, as you can see. That's all amethyst stuff.
Got and more that I don't wear, but that I carry sometimes, depending on the situation.
Right.
Where I'm going.
And you carry them in your pocket, right? That right there's black tourmaline.
I've got some that I hang outside by my door.
That's
got
better.
Some that are on there's an iron spike with a copper wire from one end to the other, and then I've got some native beadwork and some gems on there to keep the fae out of my house.
Yep. Well, that's true too. And we're also talking about wearing the iron bracelet and the left hand pulling in energy. Now you wear it on your left wrist, I've heard. Is that what you've heard as well?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Because you're drawing in that energy here, and it kind of goes out that way. That way, when you're spelling, you're usually doing your, writing with your right hand. And so anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff to that. But now, what are your go-to for protection on your gemstone besides, would you say black obsidian, and what else?
Smoky quartz seems to work really good for me. Any kind of quartz, really. I've got some that's got a light purple to it. I had some. You remember that office that I
Conite?
worked in a few years ago, where
Yes.
all that weird stuff was going on? I had some smoky quartz there that turned almost black. It was absorbing
Ugh.
so much energy.
So much negativity.
Yeah, and I left it there
Wow.
at your insistence.
I'm so glad you listened.
Big chunks. I probably paid $300 for that.
Well,
And I hated like hell to leave it, but I didn't want to bring anything with me either.
I understand. I mean, I've got some beautiful crystal here. This one's really nice. I don't know, light's picking it up, but she's a beautiful point, you
Yeah.
know. I've got that. I put it around the can when you're fire gazing. I've got a couple of other points, you know, crystal points, you know. Now they magnify. What can you tell us about quartz crystal off the top of your head?
Well, they're good for a lot of different things. I also have some geodes that are local. I didn't find them, but I know the guy that did. And he cut them open. I've got those on either side of my front door too, and that way it's in like an array, since it's circular, round and cut in half, and then the energy just pours right into it, and it absorbs that negative stuff. You just have to clean it every once in a while. But I mean, there's hundreds of little points in there. But like I said, I like it. That big one that I had sitting on my desk, it was from somewhere in South America. But
Where's my biggie?
it weighed like 2 or 3 pounds. That was the largest crystal I've ever owned.
This
It
right
had
here.
one big point and 2 little points.
That's the one, and you're really pissing me off. I bring because it's
That's
also
about the size of the
it's
one that I
also good.
left. Yeah, you can bash somebody, bounce it off somebody's head.
Works
if you
both
have
ways. Works both ways. Well, I don't know. We better not go too much further without saying hello to this wonderful chat.
To. Yeah,
now
I've
let
got
me
a
tell
bunch
you
of people in
something.
here.
Let me tell you something that you already know about this chat. That was one of the whole reasons I brought this up. Was one of the things that Anna told me. She says usually she's not honed enough to do online with a group. Yet she's only been doing that a couple of years, because she says what happens is you get a group and you get one negative Nancy in there, or one really tough skeptical troll or something, and it throws the whole darn thing off, because everybody's paying attention to it, or it's throwing the energy off, right? This is what she said about our lovely chat, Steve. She said we must have had, I don't know how many people, I wasn't paying attention, but I know it was quite a few. She couldn't find any negativity. She said, I've never seen a chat like it.
Good.
Everything was positive and light and wide open. That's why she was able to just pick people out and spend a second. Now, I'll tell you what happened. When Aunt Edna said, sure, I'll give it a whirl, you know what happened? I said, give her permission. We put her thing up there, and she gave permission to read her energy, you know? And she's getting ready. All of a sudden, she goes, boom! Like, she goes, whoa, what was that? and a positive light just went boom and hit her like a tsunami, she said. It was so funny. It was wonderful. Nothing but wonderful things to say about this wonderful chat. So, there's Laura. Hey, Laura, how you doing? Jackie, there you are. She got a reading last night. I think it was a good one. Let's see, who else? Black Dragon, how you doing, love? Go ahead, Steve. You want to read off a couple? Say hi.
Yeah, I see.
Pseudonym.
Hi,
baby.
Here. Saw Jeanette Sanchez. How you doing? My little brown elf from San Diego. Said Laura. Good to see her. Black Dragon. Pseudonym Roseworthy 6.
Here we go.
Jackie Canella. Hope I'm saying your name right.
I'll talk Jackie.
Scroll down a
There
little
we
farther
go.
here. And of course, Aunt Edna. We all love Aunt
Hey,
Edna.
Aunt Edna.
There's Dylan from Creepy Unsolved.
Great.
He's with us. Christina Bell. Journey to
Donnie.
the Gate Paranormal Portal Podcast.
Hi. How you
Slow
doing?
Motion. Who else? Donnie Cho.
Yeah, and Anna was really good.
Great
Jackie said
conspiracy.
she was real nervous, and you know I could tell. Like she said, when I sit back like this, just to kind of say something and all, and I'm like, sure. So she sit back and she wouldn't sit up, and I'm like, gosh, should I go on? Because I could tell a story. But she popped right in there. Didn't she do good chat last night? I thought she did really good. I'm going to have her back on. Paradox.
Towing to Neil. All the way
Pseudonym.
from Kingsport, Tennessee. He's here. Daryl Fawcett, my brother there. Courtney CCH, R. Young.
Hey, Courtney.
Chat here. 28 watching, 18 thumbs up. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and hit that thumbs up.
Oh, please hit that. Here comes Crispy to
There's
tell you.
Ivy Gold. How you doing, Ivy? Good to see you.
Hi, Ivy. There we go. We got a
She's
little.
one of my newest discoveries. We're going to be doing something together. We don't know just what yet, but there's some kind of collaboration brewing
Steve,
there.
I'm telling you, you're surrounded by fantastic women, aren't you? You lucky dog, you.
That's just the way it works out. And
You
she's an alien like me. She's one of those. I think she's one of the Nordic aliens or something. There. She's
Oh, really?
Just a wonderful
Was
person.
Is she RH negative? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and she's
Me too. You know I am.
She's a star child, an indigo like me.
Wow. Okay, yeah. That's even.
Indigos just kind of
bonus.
find each other. I found so
Right.
many people that just you look at them and maybe just see them in the chat.
I
and
think
you know.
RH negative does too, Steve. I swear they do
Yep,
because
it does.
and we've never been able to pinpoint what that is. Steve and I are both RH negative. We both have quite a bit of native blood. Always lean towards nature and the wonderment of the paranormal and supernatural. Always open, weren't we, Steve? All our lives.
Oh, all my life.
Yeah.
Early childhood, as far back as I can remember.
Let's take R. Young says he's RH negative, or he or she.
And,
I don't know if it's he or
Melissa
she.
Nicole's here. If you're RH negative and you know it, put a negative in the chat.
If you're RH negative and you know it, clap your hands.
or if you're a starseed, an indigo, or crystal, or rainbow child. But usually I can spot them. I've found people all over the world. I've got a girl in Germany that I talk to sometimes. I just knew. And I said, started spouting all this off to her. And she says, how do you know all this? She said, you're exactly right on every one of those. Just,
how about that?
My granny used to say, like finds like.
I've got one Roseworthy RH negative. See?
There's me and you and
and some people are
Ivy.
and don't know it.
A lot of people don't know it.
Yeah, a lot of women find out when they get pregnant because if you're RH negative, your body attacks the baby, and sometimes doesn't make it. So I mean, they have to give you a shot, and I went through all kinds of stuff, over that mess, and I think I went through 3 before they realized what was going on. So. Pseudonym says she's never checked for RH negative. Sue, do you got your wrench? Is everybody supposed to have a wrench? Got a blue wrench?
Did I say hi to Melissa Nicole? She's my co-host on the Midnight Show.
Looks
sometimes,
like she does.
When she can bother to show up. I'm just kidding. Listen,
Vulcan blood. I'm
she's
seeing
got
over
a
here.
lot going on, a lot on her plate. I like to give her a hard time, though.
I've got my popcorn ready, Steve. Looky here. Look at there in my spider bowl for ghost stories.
I saw your recipe on Facebook earlier.
It's bacon caramel. Now, we didn't make bacon caramel today. I've just got plain old good old Orville Redenbachers. Do you know that they paid, I don't know, I heard tell, that they paid so much money for a staff to come up with the Orville Redenbacher name, and after all that money and all that time, guess what they named it? Orville Redenbacher.
Orville Redenbacher.
It's true story.
Was that a real person? I heard that old guy in the
I don't
commercials,
know.
he was just some actor that they thought looked
I don't
like
know.
the name.
I thought that was Bartles and James.
That was supposedly, I heard that was like Ernest and Julio Gallo in those Bartles and James commercials. And it's their wine.
I miss Bartles and James. You know what? They were one of the first companies, or whoever they were. They was probably just paid actors as well, but most of them are, folks. I mean, honest to God, most of them are. But I don't even think Wally Wonderworld, Walmart guy, I don't think that he exists either. That big old backstory on him, I don't believe a line of that bullshit. I really don't. I think it's all some corporate thing behind the line. But anyhow, what were we talking about?
We're talking about blood types. Aunt Edna's
blood
rare.
Types.
She's AB positive. I'm B negative.
Yep, she's rare.
Second rare.
What do you got
going
on?
They call me all the time. They offer to bring the blood mobile out to my house if I donate.
Yep. They used to be after mine too until the spiders got me. Now nobody wants my blood. I mean, for those of you who don't know, it's a long story, but I got bit by 5 brown recluse spiders 5 separate times, all in the same night. Okay, and it's an adventure. I wouldn't want my worst enemy to go down. Now I went. This is a testament for herbs, though. I went all herbal. I went through, I think my son was keeping count, probably 12, 14 different doctors, all gave me the wrong stuff. And I went all herbal stuff and a testament to Native American and Chinese herbal medicine, I swear to God. medicine man and the shamans and the old wolf woman, I kid you not, I'm not making this up, pulled me out from the clutches of death. I promise you, that is like the worst thing. When it bites you, the spider venom hyper intensifies your nerves as an added bonus to the fact that it eats your tissue up faster than a bobcat or chase down a rat.
Yep.
Right, Steve?
I used to work with a girl that had been bitten on the cheek, and she had like a divot of skin missing there. Mm-hmm. And she had pictures of skin actually turned black and like sloughed off, you know. They had to go in and dig out around the rest of it to keep it from spreading. They said if it had gotten into her eye, that it probably would have made its way into her brain. Eat it up. That would have been the end of her.
I've known people that got bit in the neck and died. Great big old mercenaries. Well, we used to call them mercenaries. Now what do we call them? Contractors. But the same guys. Big old tough guys. You know. Big old, you know. And got bit once in the neck, sat down in his old pickup truck. And they had made a nest in his seat. You know those old cushion seat with the big springs and stuff? They were down in there. And he's riding on a trip. And they come and climbed up underneath his jacket. And one of them got him really bad in the neck. Before he got off the jacket. And you know what? He was dead not too long after. It hit his neurological system. And it's eating a hole, and nobody knows how fast this is. Like rattlesnake. It just kills your tissue. Tries to liquefy your innards, which you know, your organs and
Don't
stuff.
use those technical terms like that.
Innards, your innards. You know,
Chat knows knew what you meant. We know what innards are, especially people like me and Edna from the hills of Appalachia.
Your grandma used to read innards, didn't she?
That's right.
To tell the fortune.
They butchered their own pigs, and she would pick out one that was hers. And when they butchered that one, she would like poke around in its entrails with a stick, and she could tell what kind of season they were going to have next year as far as hogs, tobacco, whatever they were raising at the time.
Yep.
And my family, her kids and stuff, claimed that she was at least as accurate as the old Farmer's Almanac, if not more so. I don't know how she did it. She don't know how she did it, I don't think, but she could do it.
They are scary spiders, honey. I know. I mean, and that's the thing. You want to go to somebody in the country. When I finally found an old country doctor, like out in Hazel Green, Alabama, past Scottsboro, where right before you get to the Tennessee line, I found a doctor, and I knew it was kismet. There's another word for you, kismet, fate, and because his name was Dr. Gunn, and I said, glory, hallelujah. You know what I mean? Because at this point, after that many doctors they told me they was cutting my arm off because I got bit 3 times in this hand, you know, and I still had to do a wedding. I had a $30,000 wedding to do for my boss's only daughter. I couldn't call in, you know, sick. I had to go to work. And everybody else that got bit in the house went to a regular doctor, and they were in bad shape. So I said, well, I'll take my chances outside, and you know, I just needed a doctor to tell me what was wrong so I could go fix it. And I call the medicine man and go, what do you do for this? And they, you know, and I'm doing weird things, standing on my head and singing with bats and stuff. I mean, I was doing all kind of crazy. But you know what? I'm alive. I'm alive. For the wedding?
Cure the spider bite.
That was to cure the spider bite.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the wedding was like, but you know, that was the nurse who, the wedding next day was the nurse that came up to me. And if you ever wonder why bad things happen to you folks, and you always hear that silver lining thing, I didn't mean to talk about this, but might as well tell the chat, because this is, you know, kind of dark over light kind of thing. But you go through that kind of hell, but you know what? I learned what to do for it. I've helped, I would say, easy 100 people since, right? But the first one was this nurse who saw the bandage, asked me if I sprayed my finger. One thing came to another. I told her, no, brown recluse, spider bite, you know, I'm envenomized now, blah, blah, blah. And she said, can I see it? Because I was telling her I was using herbs. I showed it to her, the worst one I had on my arm. And even after, like, I think it was about 2 weeks in, the thing was staying small because I was attacking it with lavender oil, lobedia oil, burdock root, all kind of stuff. Anyway, and charcoal. Bunch of things. Anyway, she looked at it. She was shocked, Steve. And she said, you know what? I've got a little 3-year-old boy. Remember this story? 3-year-old boy back at the hospital. She was the head nurse in the infectious disease and toxins ward at Huntsville Hospital. and she had a 3-year-old little boy, and they were going to, nothing else to do but amputate his leg. He got bit in the thigh, and it was going rogue on him like a wildfire. The stuff would just eat your tissue wide open. I'm not joking. For anybody who's not ever seen a brown recluse spider bite, go to your thing, Google brown recluse spider bite, and look at those pictures, and you will be shocked.
The curse strikes again. Ari Young said he just had a brown recluse spider fall on him from the microwave.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry, guys. Oh, call it off, Steve. How do we back it off?
I don't know. You remember when we talked about the Titanic curse? The iceberg collapsed at the instant we were talking about the iceberg
we gotta watch it.
that they had in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Maybe I ought to move the crystals back some.
Now, let's talk about gold coins and see if any of those fall in. Bags of money.
Absolutely.
You ever heard a story about a bag of money just appearing?
Yup. What is that song about?
I'd rather have gold coins.
Pennies from heaven.
There you go.
Well, that's just pennies. We need to up our game a little bit. Is there any songs about $100 bills from heaven? Boy, they were shooting cheap back in the day, weren't they? Oh man, she's got to cut grass in a little while. Pseudonym's got to go. Well, you just have to get us on your phone and put your headphones on.
Stick us in your ear.
Stick us in your ear, and we'll keep you going because we're going to talk about say it again, psychopomps. Psychopomps. Okay, guys, I'm telling you, the spiders. I'm sorry we called the spiders out. We call all spiders to go back in your dark, dingy hole and go back to the shadows and die. Oh, gosh,
I was talking about
awful.
it the other night. Back in extreme northeastern Tennessee, a place called Roan Mountain. They've seen everything up there. There's a ghost of a guy playing the fiddle at a place called Fiddler's Rock. There's
nice.
A fireball up there. But one of the most frightening stories I've ever heard, and the guy offered to take me there. I haven't took him up on it yet. He said he knows where there's a cave on Roan Mountain that there are spiders as big as house cats. That was the way he put it.
No, thank you. Listen, I've had spiders. I've done my time.
And look, close to it.
look. You see anything shooting out of there? All the times I've been bitten by these spiders, I ought to be able to do the Spidey.
You know, one that big, even if it's not very venomous, it's going to get you good. He said that the body of the spider was as big as a cat, and that's plus the leg span and stuff.
Goliath bird eater, Sue's saying. Is that it?
I'd say that sounds about right. It could eat
Goliath
a bird, that's for sure, a squirrel, whatever it could catch.
Sue is this absolute vat of information. She's one of those people you just put, and she just comes out with this. It's an amazing amount of information. Everybody in this chat is just absolutely amazing. Yep, Spider Woman. I didn't get nothing. I got nothing.
But that spider that bit Spider-Man was radioactive, so you didn't have to go to somewhere else to do it where it'd been exposed. But yeah, as soon as I get back to Tennessee, I'm going to go to this cave and see if I can find a spider that big.
No, thank you, baby. You just go ahead and do a live with your phone from the cave, and you can show us that way.
Something with a telephoto lens so I can stand way back, because something that big can probably jump too.
Aunt Edna gets wolf spiders as big as your hand. Now, Aunt Edna, I'll tell you something. I don't know about the ones that you've got, but what I've heard, wolf spiders will kill a brown recluse, and they'll leave you alone. So I don't know if that's true.
I've heard that.
Oh, wait. The little 3-year-old boy. This is what happened, chat. The nurse told me about the little boy. They were going to amputate his leg because I promise you at that time, and still to this day, they don't do much in the hospital for it. They pack it, which is bad because it pushes the venom up and it eats in deeper, and then they give you a steroid, which stop it, and an antibiotic, which really has nothing to do with it because it's not an infection, it's necrosis. It's venom that eats your skin, whatever. These people, they don't listen. So anyway, she says, what are you doing for it? Can you write it down? And I said, sure, but you're going to lose your job if you try to do this stuff. This is herbal, native stuff. And she says, write it down anyway. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll write it down, but I don't want to be responsible if you lose your job. I said, maybe you just want to whisper it to the parents and tell them they're welcome to call me, because I'm not a doctor. I'll do the best I can, And I said, no, wait a minute, give it to the mother. Because if somebody gave me that, I would go research it and look it up and see if I could save my kid's leg. I know I would. To the midnight oil, I wouldn't sleep till I dug up an answer, researching and stuff. So she did. and she came back to bring something back from the wedding. She had, accidentally taken or something. I bumped into her again. You know that little boy was out of the hospital riding a tricycle. He was fine. So God bless mamas and God bless herbs. That's all I wanted to say. Things can happen
Right
for a
on.
reason. If I went through all that to help that little boy, there we go. But we all go through something to learn, don't we, Steve?
Yep.
That's
think
how
so.
all this stuff got passed along. Not just ghost stories, but herbal cures and just everything. Really, wow, that's amazing. What are we saying about the? Ooh, wait, there's another brown recluse. There might be more spiders falling out of the sky here. I would.
Spiders carrying gold coins.
Crawling across my chest and I would grab, pinch it, and toss it. Ooh, gross. Oh, please,
You're brave,
no.
Paradox, or you'd had a few to drink.
Woo, absolutely. So anyway, Psychopomps. I don't know that much about them. I didn't know what it was. I totally admit it. I was looking through to try to find stuff because Steve said, why don't you talk about stuff that inspired pieces of the book or something like that. So we're going to get Bigfoot Anon on, I think, next week, yeah? O'Connor?
Yeah, he's out in the Everglades tonight, and then going to have dinner with his dad before he
Nice.
goes back to, I think, Jacksonville or wherever he lives. But he's
Nice.
going to join us next Monday night.
How cool is that? Connor's going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about Bigfoot and probably a lot of things and interdimensionals and all that kind of stuff. But tonight I thought if I could dig a little
Patriot.
bit about... Hey, Patriot, how you doing, sweetie? And Grandpa C too, and Oracles and Beyond is here. With all the gangs here now, Steve. We can get started. 31 minutes in talking about stuff.
We're still on spiders, and we got them crawling on people.
Oh, no more spiders, no more spiders. So,
I almost burned the house down one time trying to get rid of a black widow spider.
oh, we had a big major fire down the street all day long. Fire trucks, and they kept coming and coming and coming. I said, Lord of mercy, what's happened? And we're trying to hear on the news. We could hear them. It just kept coming. So you could tell it was another squad and another squad. Nobody was leaving and going away. It just kept coming. Found out it was 4 houses on fire a couple of blocks away from us, man. It was awful. I mean, pray for those people because it was, when I finally heard about it, it was a couple hours after. But the houses are too darn close together, man, you know? That's scary. Because one caught the next one, so it was awful. But anyway, so tonight I was looking for stuff about souls, right? And started thinking about soul collectors and soul gatherers, and then I came across this, and it's Psychopomps. Has anybody ever heard of this before in the chat? If you've give you a hint, yeah, I know Steve has, and I know probably Sue has. But check, Steve. You ready for a little visual? All right, now I apologize, it's small. The other one I did a little bigger and it didn't load in time for this. So here's one. You can see all the pictures. There's some of you can notice right away. Crows, and you've got that. What's the Egyptian one again, Steve, in the top corner? I want to say Anubis, but I don't think that's right.
I can't see the tell.
You can't see it? All right. Let's go through and see.
I've got my reading glasses on, but it's just too tiny.
We got a couple of big ones coming.
I recognize the Grim Reaper.
There he is right there.
But there's also, there's so many of them. Literally, it's from the Latin, and it literally means guide of souls, just in the roughest translation.
Cross the river Styx. Look at this.
Yeah, don't pay the ferryman until he gets you to the other side. I remember that song.
And in a lot of novels and everything else, a lot of these old pictures, this is all what they consider death personified, and most of this is leaning towards the Reaper, right?
Yeah.
You know, as far as this goes.
There's nothing evil about it. They don't judge you. They're like the Uber to the afterlife. They're just there to pick you up and take you wherever you're going. And in mythology, there was a lot of different ones. Persephone, Thanatos, of course, the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper is one that most people recognize, I think.
I did not know the FTD guy. Look at this one, Steve. Can you see the FTD guy? What is his name, guys?
Mercury.
Mercury, there we go. I didn't know that he was he carried souls. I had no clue.
In some, I don't want to say religions, but in some cultures, crows
There it is.
are.
Boy, right on cue, Steve.
Wow, you could have done that any better. Say in some cultures, crows
and
carry
ravens.
people,
Yep.
carry the souls of the dead to the afterlife.
Sure enough. And magpies. Like in the Dunwich Horror. H.P. Lovecraft. Right? Here's some more predictions of them. Okay, and we've got the Hellhounds, Steve. You know, now I didn't know that they were to carry souls. I thought they were more of a revenge and to drag. Well, I guess they drag your soul to hell, right?
They can. Those are real popular in British culture. Like you start looking into Anne Boleyn and some of those things, they would often see hellhounds associated with her reappearance on the anniversary of her beheading. And that's strange because she was beheaded at one place, but there's about 5 different places where they see her ghost.
And
And
I think you just won a prize. Somebody just won a prize. Did you get an answer correct? Did you hear that bong?
No,
Sounded like you got. Sounded like you got. Yes, he's got it correct, and you win. You win the wash machine. You win the washing machine. The password is. Look at here.
Lovely parting gifts.
The crow. Now, I thought this was interesting because, you know, I read the graphic novels, or what other people would call comic books, and the movie, of course, and we know all about the curse with that whole family, right? Brandon Lee and Bruce Lee, yes, and he died halfway through, and then that's when they did CGI to finish it, you know, had him walking in the rain and things, but the thing was about how they were leaning on the belief that crows not only carried your soul over to the afterlife, but also guided you back so you could take your revenge on the mortals who did you wrong. Yeah. I don't know if anybody ever heard that. I thought that was pretty cool. And there's Brandon Lee there.
The ravens, which are very similar to crows, they're another guide like that. And I like the way Poe described them as grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore. But they're harbingers of doom and gloom too.
The pseudonym says here, the curse of playing the Psychopomp. Yep, there you go. That's true. And it is such a shame, Melissa, absolutely. I remember when that happened and all the controversy around it. And, you know, something about, he was playing with a prop gun, wasn't he? And I had heard at the time there was a piece of something in there, and there was a blank behind it, and it was enough for the projectile.
Yeah, a prop gun, and they had dummy shells loaded in it, I guess just for visual effect. And then when they emptied those out, the heads of one of the shells, the actual projectile part of the bullet had stayed, I think it's in the barrel or maybe in the chamber, and then they loaded it up with blanks. And it wasn't full blanks, I mean, as much as an actual shell would have, but there was enough in there to fire that projectile out and into him enough to put a hurting on him.
Right, but there was also all that stuff with his whole family, wasn't it? With the curse and...
Well, there's a curse. There's a time when supposedly Bruce Lee and David Carradine were out to kill each other because each one thought the other was giving away secrets of the Buddhist or the temples, the Shaolin. So I don't know. A lot of that I think was just made up, but it made for interesting stories, you know, for the National Enquirer and stuff like that back in the day. But, you know, then Carradine died under somewhat mysterious circumstances.
Yep. And Papa, what is Sue saying here? Papa, I don't know how to pronounce that. Gidi was one of the most colorful psychopomps.
Voodoo, yeah.
In voodoo, yes, absolutely. I mashing up the name.
Papa Legba, Gidi. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not sure, but there's some good stuff there.
Absolutely.
Listen, Nicole says Carradine died under kinky circumstances.
He did indeed. You
know, hanging in the closet, but apparently it wasn't meant to be an end to it all, but just an enhancement for whatever he was doing. There was never proven, but it was said there's other people in the room with him. There was female-sized footprints on the bedspread that led to the window. Apparently, whatever he was doing, he overdid it, and she panicked and took off.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that going on in that area. In Bangkok.
Oh,
Oh
Lord.
my God, it's famous for that. One night in Bangkok, you might not make it out alive. You might meet
Really?
you might meet a psychotrope or pomp. Courtney says here she hates being in the city because she never sees ravens anymore. I actually have one in hangs out in my backyard. Very lucky with a murder of crows. Now, how interesting is that, Steve? That a group of crows
is known as a murder of
as a murder of crows, and they're also known to carry souls and messengers, of the other side and stuff like that. So interesting. Now, here's a couple of pictures. I threw this one up because I thought it was interesting. Somebody got it in a graveyard, obviously, and it just shows. The guy says it's a Grim Reaper, but, to me, it's just, you can see it outlined a little bit here. It's just a group of mists that's formed that shape.
I see a bird shape in there.
Do you? Yeah. I think maybe with him, the photographer who took the picture. Let me stop that.
If you look at the top,
let me go back a sec.
top left corner there, that's the beak, and there's the head, and then coming down there was the wings.
Let's see if I can get that back.
Looked like a bird to me.
Yep, I'm trying to slide it back so we can get it. Come on, buddy. A little too far. Well, yep, I believe, it could have been anything, but I don't know. There it is again. I don't know what the guy saw before he got the picture. I don't know if he saw something that looked like the Grim Reaper, and that's just the picture
that's
he
the
got.
one I was talking about there.
Yeah. All right. Now, this one, I didn't do the whole video, and like I said, it's small, and again, I apologize because the one that I fixed, which should have been bigger for you guys to see, it didn't load in time to... YouTube was being just trying to find something nice to say. It was being a bitch, Okay, now this one, 4 bicyclers are going up the side. They didn't show all that because they actually show the guy getting hit by the truck, but and I didn't want to see that. But it's 4 bicyclers trying to cut in between a truck on the highway. In between. Now, let this be a lesson to everybody who's riding a bike on the highway. Don't do it. The 4th guy kind of lost his balance and got hit and went under the truck, and the truck tires went over him. And then the film, the CC camera picked up something next to it. And I hope you guys can see it, but look to where the arrow is. Here we go. See if you can see it at all. You'll see a black form. Can you see it? It just came up out of nowhere. And when you can see the picture really close, I think I got a little bit of a close-up. You can see it's a hooded figure.
Exactly, something there.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching in the wrong place, and I was lagged. I was making the comments a minute ago, but I see what you're talking about now.
Right.
Yeah, there's looks like a hooded figure there.
Right.
I've got some interesting Grim Reaper stories when we get to that part.
All right. Well, this is almost over, and we will absolutely do it. Let me see if I can find that one comment and pull it so we can see better. All right. And there he is again. That's just, close up. He just appears out of nowhere, and he's got a hood, and then he disappears. And then the next one that's coming up right behind this, hang on, here it comes, is that famous one where the person is laying in the bed, just died. Now, again, it's real small, but at the end it does a real good close-up. So just kind of keep an eye toward the back of the bed, and you'll see a mist come up behind him. And for those of you watching on a bigger screen, you can probably see a little bit better. But I see just so tiny, it's not even funny. So I apologize again. But you'll see this close-up coming. And now, this is the one where it looked like the spirit sat up and lifted out of the body. If you've ever seen this one.
Oh, wow.
Now, do you see it?
Yeah.
And here it comes. You're going to get a close-up again. It's coming a little bit closer.
Goes.
There he goes. Now, the thing I want you to look at this time, see him sit up. And you'll see a face with a hood. It looks like he's lifting something brighter colored out of the other body, Steve. I think it's a Grim Reaper carrying out a soul, not just a soul lifting out of the body. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That is just crazy. Here it comes again. There he goes. And you see the light colored coming up out like it's almost in his hands. When you can see it bigger, it's amazing. This is one where a lady is walking down the hall. Let me show you that picture again. Go back just a titch. Her father just died. She looks down the hall and snaps a picture of what she says is a Grim Reaper. Now here that comes one more time, I think. You see it lift out. Look like it's carrying in his hands and pulled the soul right out of this guy's body. See, there it goes. See the little colored lump at the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that creeped me out. Here comes a crow appears on a wheelchair, and there's a Grim Reaper looking at it, flipping through pages of a book at the end of the hall. Right after her dad died.
He's
so there you go.
Like looking at his watch or his
right?
hourglass.
How crazy is that? Did you guys, I was watching so close. Did you guys see it? Grey Wolf said, I see it. It looked like when it, at the first time I saw it, I was like everybody else. It looked like the soul just sat up and then lifted out. But if you really look at it, you see a face, you see a hood, and as it pulls out in its hands, it's pulled what looks like the light out of the dead person. Crazy.
And
Crazy.
The other thought I had looking at it was that it was some kind of attachment that person had.
Hey, could
being
be.
left or being made to leave after, like he's dead, leave him alone, come with me, one of those type things.
Wow. Well,
it was something leaving that body, that's for sure.
Sue says, holy shit.
Yeah,
Laura says, holy crap. We got some eyes. But all the way through, yeah.
That's definitely one for the holy shit column right there.
Yep. Just wow, Aunt Edna, Grandpa C, just wow. That was the thing that got me, is the pulling out, right? You can see the pull. Yeah, see? That is crazy. Yep, Courtney says that's crazy. Absolutely. I mean, that one just got me. And somebody said I think it's up here. The Grim Reaper is just trying to collect a paycheck like everybody else. Oh, gosh. Well, that one, it got me. Now that, you know what it reminded me of? You remember the time you told me about the hospital? Mm-hmm. And you saw it was kind of almost like that Harry Potter thing where that thing was kind of hovering over and sucking out the life force that felt. Tell us about that again.
I didn't see it as much as felt it in my spirit person, but yeah, I was at East Tennessee Children's Hospital. My daughter had to go in there for a few days after she was born because she was jaundiced, and they wanted to put her under a lamp. So they sent her over to ETCH. And it was awful. I mean, the whole place had several floors, and there's kids in there that are dying, that have been burned, that have incurable diseases, that just all manner of things. But that was, as far as being an empath and feeling things, that was the most evil place I've ever felt. There was something, and just in my mind's eye, I could see like this blackety black, blacker than black cloud. Have you ever seen anything that's just blacker, like beyond black? We were talking about black widow spiders.
Yep.
If you ever look at one of those close, they are blacker than black. They are just like so black.
Right.
Like black-eyed kids' eyes.
Yes.
It was that kind of black, but it was a cloud. It was a mist. It was moving. And it was feeding off all the pain and misery of these little children. And you think about that, the Bible talks about the children being pure and things like that. And then a lot of these religions that require human sacrifice, children is what they want because they are so pure. And just, oh man, there's just going into some dark places here. But whatever it was feeding off that. And the first night there, I didn't think I was going to survive. The next day I left and I went and got my crystals and stuff and came back. Yep. And that made all the difference in the world.
See?
But when you're not ready for it, when you're not expecting it,
right.
You run up into something like that. And whatever entity, this dark mist was, it knew that I knew.
Yes.
And it was not going to make it comfortable for me at all.
That's the thing, I think I did an episode with, you and I have done a couple, and then I did the one with Jeremy and Enflinger, where sometimes they look back. That's the thing that gets me. When they connect in to your energy, you connect into theirs, and they know that you know, and it looks back at you. That's like a grinner, Steve. They have that knowing, and that's that chills you to the bone, man.
Yeah, and it was
chills
just like,
you to the bone.
It's like, almost had like a grin. Like, yeah, come and do something about it. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
But,
absolutely. So all of this, I don't know out of all these what Grim Reaper. I mean, there were so many pictures, Steve, of people, but to me, it looked like people in Halloween costumes walking down the beach, or, you know, something else. But if you wake up in the middle of the night, and you see something like this stand at the foot of your bed. Who doesn't remember that
happened
one
to me
story?
one time, and I
There you go.
almost destroyed my hoodie that was hanging on the bedpost. I'd forgotten it.
Those shadows.
It's
that
the
move.
Grim Reaper. Get away, get away.
There's one, I saw it not too long ago, but it was from an old, I want to say Extraordinary out of Australia. If you've never seen that, it's on YouTube. It's called Extraordinary. It's got a great Australian host. And a lady, I think this was the show, a lady went on and told about it. She would wake up every night in a new house, and she'd have like what looked like a gargoyle sitting at the end of her bed. And the Grim Reaper standing behind it, and the gargoyle kept looking back at like almost like a monkey size gargoyle, which is, I don't know what's creepier, big or small or monkey size, I don't know.
I think a smaller one would be
Crouched.
more scary to me.
Yeah, crouched at the foot of her bed, and she'd look, and it would look at the Grim Reaper, and the Grim Reaper would look at her and look at the gargoyle and say no, and she's just up against the wall, just frozen, screaming. And this happened, she said, night after night after night in her house until she finally moved out. I'm like, well, how long did it take you to move out? Because it wouldn't take me that long, you know. But
Yeah,
holy
like,
mackerel.
I'll be back. I'll send for the rest of the stuff. Just to,
Right?
I'll have the tower put in your name and the cable.
Oh man, there you go. Andrew's telling us something.
Yeah, Andrew joined us on Campfire Stories Friday night. He's got a lot of good stories. He's a truck driver, coast to coast.
Oh, that's
and he
great.
has seen some stuff.
I was a truck driver in the Army, Andrew. Hello, fellow trucker. That's great. He's talking about Waverly Hills is something else. A friend of mine that lives down in close by there went to Waverly Hills and went to the morgue, opened up the door and got in one of I guess the morgue, what do you call that, slots? And he laid down and shut the door. Ugh. And I think here we go. She said people were talking to her inside of there. Oh, that's just creepy. She grew up on one of the most haunted streets in North San Diego. She was in the middle school. The time the PSA flight 182 crashed. And in North San Diego. I guess he's going to keep going. I bet he does. You're going to have to come on here, Andrew, and tell some of these stories.
He's got some fantastic stories.
Now, how many people... that one with the gargoyle got me. Now, I remember waking up once. I was on my side, and I would have been facing the wall, but there was some space between me and it. And I heard in my ear my full given name. And this gruff, deep voice, and it was so matter of fact and methodical. It was like, you know, the way he said,
Cisco's not here. Can I take a message?
yeah, she's out. Just leave a message on the thing. But it was the way it was said, and I wouldn't open my eyes. And I just started doing my stuff in my eyes closed because I could feel the breath. I could smell it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say it was foul beyond belief, but it wasn't great. But I could feel the hot breath, and I would not open and I just did my stuff because I wouldn't be able to unsee it. It was my whole thought. I mean, it might be here, and whatever I've got to fight it, you know, isn't in my hands anyway. So I just kind of you know, and that was horrible. But I felt that that's kind of what I was going to see. You know, there's this little short kind of Grim Reaper looking thing that's been reported a lot, kind of like the Hat Man kind of reports, but it's a small Grim Reaper, not with a skull face, but more like an old gnome or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a real thick skin, big nose, something like you'd think a gnome or you know, one of those type of creatures would look like. Have you heard any of that, Steve?
Somewhat. That tends to be more in the Nordic and the South American countries where they see those type of creatures. But I've heard some stuff here of the actual Grim Reaper encounters. There was one I read about. The guy was in the hospital for something. He was in a room with somebody else and said about 2 o'clock in the morning, a well-dressed man, a very handsome man, just kind of strolls in the room. And the guy said, he woke him up and said, "Who are you?" And he said, I'm the angel of death." And the guy said, "Well, are you here for me?" And he said, "No, not this time." And then kind of points over to the other guy. He turned around and he walks out, and the guy in the other bed coded within just a few minutes, flatlined. And that was the end of him.
And that was it.
And then the scariest one I've ever heard, girl that I grew up down the street from, I could take you to her to this day, and she'll tell you the same story. She claimed that one night she had, it was either a dream or vision, and the Grim Reaper or the Angel of Death came to her, identified itself, and said, I'm here to take you. And she was young. She was like maybe 11 or 12 years old. And she's like, "No, I'm not ready to go. I'm young." All these excuses. And he said, "Well, very well, but I have to take somebody. Who would you like me to take?" And she said, just off the cuff, she said, "Take my grandpa. He's old. He's had a full life." And said this thing very eloquently and very well. And then it disappeared. Well, she woke up to the phone ringing. It was her grandmother calling to say that her grandfather had passed away during the night. And it flipped her out. She spent years in therapy over that. She thought that she killed her grandfather because she told the Grim Reaper, the Angel of Death, to take him instead of her. Now, how'd you like to walk around with that on you as a kid?
Imagine?
And not tell anybody about it?
See, real life can be so much more horrific than, fiction. I mean, the stories that we've heard, Steve, in our lifetime is nothing, compared to what's happened out there. Now, Brian, Sir Bowden is here, and he says hello to the chat to everybody, and he is saying this. What you're describing is a known cryptid. Is called a house fairy, and they are not nice. Have you heard of the house fairy, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the ones that you leave stuff out for them, and they can be... and there was any of them, though, they're going to trick you. They may be nice at the beginning or to lure you in or whatever, but you kind of either have to drive them out or drive a bargain with them. But anytime you deal with the Fae, you're going to lose. Now, there's very few that are actually friendly. Will keep the word. Brownies are among that sect, but out of all of them, the pixies, the trolls, the gnomes, there's literally hundreds of different Fae, and then different realms. They all have their king and their queen and their hierarchy there. That's the part to me that makes them seem demonic, because it talks about that in some of the occultic literature and stuff. It talks about the hierarchy of demons, and this type of demon is over that type of demon, and they all have names. And so maybe they are just, the Fae or elementals and all that. Maybe they are fallen angels or the Nephilim or I don't know. There's some scary stuff when you delve into it and find out, this ain't no fooling around.
It's not little cute things. Even the Cherokee little people. I mean, even all of that.
One day to Sunday, I think is what they called them, and they were at war with them for I think hundreds of years, and then they finally just agreed to disagree and leave each other alone. But they believe they exist, and the fairies will still come in and steal kids when they can, changelings, because they need that bloodline to continue on.
Okay, hold on one second. What have I done?
And
there we go. We're back. We didn't go anywhere, I don't think. I just lost the chat for a second. It just kind of flicked out. Last night it stopped in the middle of everything. But Edna had a question here. Can they look normal? I believe she was asking that about like the house gnomes and that kind of stuff. What do you think, Steve? I don't know.
I don't really know as far as if they can change, if they can shape shift like that or not. Most of them just appear as they are, but there are certain types of entities and things that can change their appearance, that can shape shift. I've been peering into the deer man lately, and then the concept of the not deer. Have you heard about that?
No, I've heard of the deer man, but
not a deer when it's a not deer.
When it's a not deer. That's crazy.
I heard a story not too long ago about a guy that was pulled over on the side of the road, and I don't remember why he was pulled over, just maybe to take a rest or do something, and he observed a deer coming down the hill over to the side of the road, and it gets up to the guardrail, And if you've ever watched deer when they jump out on asphalt, they kind of act weird. They think it's ice or something. They're not sure of their footing, and they'll kind of skitter across. But he said he was watching this deer, comes down this grassy hill, gets to the guardrail, and he's like, well, maybe this will be interesting. Well, when it gets to the guardrail, it turns into a man, steps over the guardrail, walks across the highway, steps over the guardrail to the other side, changes back into a deer, and bounds off into the woods. And he said, I was straight, I was sober, I was wide awake, but I know what I saw. So was that a not deer? Was it some sort of a skinwalker or a shapeshifter? I mean, obviously, but
Yeah.
what and to what purpose? And why did he see it? Did he just happen to catch a glimpse of it? Or see, my grandmother, I talked to her about that extensively, and she said that there was some things you're meant to see, and that usually it'll have personal meaning or something for you. But other times there's things that meant for other people, and you may happen to observe it just because of who you are and how you perceive things. So she said not everything you see is necessarily meant for you, and she was big on learning how to discern whether something, like say you observed something like that, was it for you? Did it have personal meaning for you? Was it a warning? Was it a foreboding? Was it a harbinger? So
Wow.
but I'd love to see a not deer or a deer man.
I don't know. I'm done. I think I'm done seeing stuff. I don't think I want to see anything else. I'm about done with all that mess. But, just when you stop looking, that's when you see them. Anyway, Sir Bowden is saying, don't forget about the jinn. They can transform into a variety of entities, and they have a hatred for all humans. Absolutely true. I think one of the creepiest jinn stories I've ever heard was from a fellow bartender. And I was bartending at the time. And she told me, thank goodness not in the bar we were working in, but when she was working in another bar, guy sat down, and it was just the presence, kind of like you knew he was coming before he got there kind of thing. The atmosphere changed. He was extremely good looking, very well dressed, but it was the way he was talking. She said either he was a jinn or the devil sent him. Because the way he spoke, he kind of knew things she was thinking, but not directly, but in a roundabout way. Like, he wouldn't say, you should have bought that dress you were looking at earlier today at the mall. He said something more roundabout, like, you deserve a nice wardrobe. You deserve nice things, or something like that, to make her think he knew that she had was going to buy a dress and didn't. Little personal things, but in a roundabout, creepy way. And then he starts making offers. There are things, I can do if you just wish for them. In another roundabout way. Not you have 3 wishes, get counting, get wishing here. It wasn't like that. It was like, would you be willing to give up this for that? Just creepy. She said even during the conversation, she felt like she was not just a hypnotic kind of trance thing, but more like like she was going to pass out, like the wind was being sucked out of her, And finally, she just ran in the back in the kitchen, and the cook was back there, and she just said, go out there and tell that guy he's got to go. And she went out, grabbed her purse, went out the back door, and left. That's how scared she was. She left her shift early. So it was just the way she thought it was like he was a demon, trying to get her to give up, certain things. Kind of like the Chinaman button thing. Everybody knows the Chinaman button story. You want to tell that? Your version?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Well, the one the old story is a man walks into an antique store, blah, blah, blah. He has a box with a button on it. He gets to start talking to the antique dealer and explains that this is a magical, ancient Chinese puzzle box. And the thing is you have to knowingly, if you know that you're going to hit that button that's on the box, and you would get, like, say, $1 million. I think it changes over time how much money it is, but just say $1 million. But somebody you don't know is going to die. And that person thinking about Well, I don't know who it is, and they're asking questions like, would it be somebody who would die anyway? Like, did they have a bad heart? Well, you don't know. It could be anybody. It could be, and like a little 8-year-old girl on a scooter goes by the window and says, you don't know. It could be her. It could be this one. It could be, and it's just the torment of the breakdown of the person making this decision and everything. Of course, it probably was more devastating 50 years ago or 40 years ago when it was written than it would be now, because I bet a lot of people would hit that button without thinking twice.
Oh, yeah.
But that was the creepy part of it, like the monkey paw. The monkey
paw.
It
was
similar.
A short story that I read a long time ago in a collection, and there was this thing that they had set up for criminals that were going to be put to death. They had a construction site that people had to walk through. This was like in New York. And there was a button just on a wooden wall there that they had enclosed off. Well, behind this wall is a guy hooked up to like an electric chair.
Ooh.
And a big sign that says, do not push button. And after they would like roll dice. And after whatever you roll, like say if you rolled an 11 people had to walk by without pushing the button. If 11 people walked by, then you were freed and set free to go, all your slate wiped clean. But can you imagine? I mean, if you tried something like that today and you put up a sign that said, don't push this button, everybody that walked by there would push it.
Yep, that's so true. And there's a lot of people in the chat saying, is that the storyline for Hellraiser? I don't know. I never watched Hellraiser. That was like a little past my thing. I never got into Pinhead.
It may be. I've seen that, but it's been a long time ago. But there was a puzzle box there, and you were releasing hell on earth and demons and stuff with it, but I've forgotten.
Yep. There was definitely a Twilight Zone episode about that. The Chinaman box, maybe. Something like that. I know there was a CBS Mystery Theater. So if you like Theater of the Mind and things like that, there is one, and those are on YouTube. Just put Chinaman box or something. If it comes up CBS Theater,
that's a theme that kind of comes up, like the monkey's paw or things like that, where you have wishes, but you be careful what you wish for. Even The Lady of the Tiger. Have you ever seen or read that? That was written by my great-great-uncle Frank Stockton.
Oh, really?
And you know what I'm talking about?
What was the name again?
The Lady or the Tiger.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Really, Steve?
Francis R. Frank Stockton. Yeah.
How about that? So it's in your blood, honey.
Great-uncle. It was great-great-uncle. But, yeah, he was an author around the turn of the last century. Very common. He was contemporary of Mark Twain's and Lewis Carroll and people like that. He wrote mainly kids' stories.
That's
amazing. He wrote some science fiction, some horror, too. I've got a lot of his books. I've even got some signed ones, but I bought them like from bookstores. My grandmother had, I think, everything he'd ever written signed, and my rotten cousins got there, and I don't know what they did with them. Probably threw them in the dumpster or took them to Goodwill or something, because they wanted to get them and look through them and see if there was any money in the pages.
Right.
And then the books weren't worth anything to them. These were, signed first edition.
Suckers.
But
at least
it had sentimental value, but all his stuff is in the public domain. I think I'm going to start narrating some of it.
Oh, that would be great,
really
Steve.
Good stories, some good kids' stories in there, too.
Absolutely. Do it. And, in his honor, put it up there for others to hear. That would be absolutely wonderful. Connor is here, and he says Connor. Monday is very soon. Hey, Connor. Absolutely. We're going to do Bigfoot, interdimensionals, portals, and different types of Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Can you wrap your teeth around that one, Bigfoot and on?
Have you ever heard, and I know we talked about your encounter with a baby Bigfoot, but have you ever heard of an entity or creature, and this is all new to me recently, something called Tinyfoot? It's like a Bigfoot, but it's only a couple feet tall that people have seen. Like it almost sounds like one of the Fae or something.
Right.
It's a hairy, man-like thing, but it's a little bitty, a little foot or something. I don't know.
Littlefoot.
Tinyfoot. I don't know.
Tinyfoot. That's cute. Bowden, have you heard anything about tiny feet?
Have you heard that?
Not you.
Sir Brian?
Brian's got big old feet. He's a big old bear of a man.
That was something that somebody
Bigfoot Anon, maybe. Okay, here he goes. It's called, hang on.
Albatwitch.
Let's get that up there. You read that one, Steve. That one will tie my tongue in a knot.
Looks
wait a minute. That's the wrong one I got. Here we go.
Albatwitch or Albatwitch.
It keeps moving.
I've seen that word on over on Timothy Renner's Strange Familiars, but I'm
Okay.
not sure how to pronounce it.
Cool beans. I've not heard of that. But then again, I hadn't heard of, if I ever read it out loud, I didn't know what it was. Like, I know because I read Dunwich Horror, and I understood that the magpies were taking the soul back and forth, different things like that. And of course, the crow, that's so native of, so many stories around the crow taking souls or being messengers of the dead, both ways. But not so much as if somebody came up and said, what do you think about the psychopomps? I would just like, what? Excuse me? I mean, that wasn't a word I was familiar with, familiar with the things. But the base or the whole thing is, oh, shoot, I don't know what I've done again. Here we go, I'm back. I've got a touch screen. Oh, this thing. I have to be so careful. Last night, I shut the whole thing down just trying to answer a question. I mean, just, and I'm like, well, just meet me over. And this chat was back in there, I think, in 30 seconds. And we were right back up and running because the chat's just fantastic. But and I think Jackie was putting the link in the thing. We're over here now. She messed up. We're over here. And I think I played the outro at the beginning too, and I almost, and I looked up and I was trying to fix the other computer, and I looked over and it was the end. And I'm like, did I do the show already? Because did I just like whack out? I messed myself up 6 ways.
Come on and do it in reverse. Bye everybody, and then start talking, and then.
I was wondering if I could put this, because Brian didn't see this, and we've got Bigfoot, we got Connor in here too, didn't see this, and I was wondering if I click this little guy with a bigger screen, if the chat could see that one where it's lifting out of the body better. I'm going to give it a whirl and see what happens. If we lose you, I love you all, goodbye, good night. Let me see if I can get it bigger. Because I feel like they got cheated. I'm so mad that other video, no, it just knocks you out. And me. No, it just keeps going. Oh, well, let's watch it small again anyway. Watch them lifting out of here. If you didn't see it, Brian, look, because what I want you to do is look.
It's that last frame over on the right.
Well, I put it on there, but it just keeps it small. Look.
That's as big as it gets.
Yep. It just gets, stays the same. It just moves around. But anyway, Brian, look at this. But the thing is, it looks like when the thing lifts out that it's not the soul of the person that's lifting out. It looks more like a Grim Reaper pulling a soul out of the person. Here it comes one more time. And look at, in its hands, it looks like it's pulling out a lighter glob of, mist or whatever you want to call that, right, Steve? I don't know what you call it. The essence, life essence?
I don't know.
Yeah, here it goes. See how it's down at the bottom? He pulled that out of the other body.
The light, the very soul, it looks like
that
person.
Yeah. And that lady's father died. She walked down the hallway in the hospital and sees a crow sitting on a wheelchair and
the Grim Reaper reading a magazine.
Reading a magazine down the hall. Oh, my God.
Looking at his hourglass that he wears on his wrist there to see him in time.
That is freaking amazing. I mean, if you look at, that's all over YouTube, and you'll see it much better. Just Google spirit lifts out a person's body or dead person's body or something like that. Eventually you'll hit it, probably the first 3. But because it was all over the place a while ago, but I never noticed that different color, that different, obviously 2 separate energies there moving. You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember, who's the guy? I'm going to get him on one night because he's a hoot too. He bought the house. Well, no, he bought a house that was built on the land where Helter Skelter happened. Up in the mountains in California.
I know the guy that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was the former Tate.
Tate,
Tate house.
Sharon Tate, and
the house is torn down and gone, but they built on that land, and then he gives tours, and they have ghost hunts and stuff there.
And the Folger couple, and then they had that one guy there that was unfortunate, that young 18-year-old kid that was just visiting.
Stephen Parent, yeah.
Yep,
he was
and
visiting the guy that lived in the pool house.
Yep. And he got killed in the driveway, and then Sharon Tate and then her boyfriend, I can't remember all the people, but anyway, he's always doing paranormal investigations, got cameras everywhere, written a couple books. But the thing that I brought it up for is they got a picture doing somebody investigating.
Oh man.
Yes, oh man, thank you. Yes, that's him. He's got the house on the land now, at least a house on part of the land. Yep, Saleo Drive. That's it. Roseworthy got it right here. Is that how you pronounce that? Saleo Drive?
CeeLo Drive.
CeeLo Drive. There you go. Yep. So, yes, I do remember.
Cielo. Maybe it's Cielo.
Cielo. And yes, I do remember Dead Like Me. That was good. Let me see if I can find this now. This chat's going so fast. Hold on. I'm sorry, guys. Yep. Dead Like Me.
I don't think they changed the name of the road, but they changed the address.
Yep. There it is. That's exactly what they did. So, yeah. So they get pictures, really good pictures, and everybody's, kind of the same, especially in this chat and us and everything about orbs. But I don't throw away videos that have orbs or orbs that are doing certain things. Like if they're not following the pattern of a wind and it's not dust, and it's not a bug, and it's got a movement to it. And most of the time, sometimes if you really look, there's different colors, right? So this one was a full-on orb, and it had a small orb inside the orb, like a pregnant mother would have a life inside of the orb. And this was the big orb they got. It came in the back window, what do you call those sliding glass doors from the patio, and comes in and just kind of hovered in the center of the living room, and they got the whole thing. And when they blew it up, it was an orb within an orb, like a pregnant mother with a baby. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's what that kind of reminded me of. Not that it's the same, but that energy within an energy pulling out of this body in this video. It's absolutely, it's mind-blowing to me. And I can't tell you if it's a reaper or if it's a spirit or if it's their guardian angel or a loved one or something helping it along. But I think it sure fits the theme of someone who's a caretaker of a soul and crossing it over.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Now, in the book, there's not, I don't have these in the book. I don't even think I got a crow in there. Steve, I know the sound of the crow was in there, but again, Steve challenged me to put as much Halloween stuff in there, and I don't know how many things you guys can name off if you've listened to Cabin 22. How many Halloween things you can name off, but we might do that tonight. But, I mean, everything is in there, and I can't for the life of me remember if I had a crow. So if I did, he'll definitely be in the
I can't imagine you not having one, but I can't remember it right now.
I can't either. I know there's an owl, and I know there's the black cat and an owl. Gosh, I even got candy corn in the daggum thing. But, that's
even the
something.
Kitchen sink.
Yep.
The stuff's dancing around in the kitchen sink, and the fishing lures are flying out of the tackle box.
Yep. Haunted caves and everything else. But there is a soul collector. Now, the soul collector that we've been talking about tonight, I mean, they look scary, but like Steve said in the beginning, oh, I did have a crow. Thank you, Sir Bowden. See, I mean, I have to have other people tell me what I put in my books. That's funny. But that's good.
Writing.
I was feeling really bad if I missed the crow. I was going to just say, and the crow told the whole story at the end. Fix it real quick.
Hey, Lazarus Project, good to see you.
Hey, Lazarus, how you doing?
And then I woke up, it was all a dream.
Yep, it was all a dream.
The end.
Yeah, but there's definitely a soul collector. Now, Steve, I don't know if you have a story about what you believe to be a soul collector, a soul reaper, something that collects souls. What I'm talking about is the ancient ones that really you can do not a whole lot about, but just get away from it. And somebody asked me once, why do they want them? Well, for power. It's something that they don't have. You know what I mean?
The ones I've mainly heard about are in the Cherokee tradition. And unfortunately, I don't know a lot about them because nobody will talk much about them.
True.
The elders of the tribe will get in your butt for talking about some of that stuff and chide you for even thinking about it.
True.
But one that I can think of offhand, I've got a story on my channel called Spearfinger, which is a legend there in the Smokies. She is a type of soul collector.
Okay. Now, does it give any, in the legend, does it give any reason why she wants the souls? Is it just basically for power or something that they don't have because they're soulless?
I think if she kind of feeds on it, or like
Right.
I said, she's soulless, she doesn't have one, and
Right.
any that she takes of somebody else's and apparently uses up,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a consistent thing. And once it's gone, and she's got to have more, almost like a vampire seeking blood. I think it's kind of that same. It's a life energy need that they have.
Yeah, that's that's a trip. That's a trip, and definitely power. We know about we've talked a little bit in the past about Loosh and how others feed off of energy and fear and depression and lower vibrational things, especially fear, grief, panic, anxiety. And they want you that way because they feed off of it. But these things actually take your soul. Now, most people here have probably seen the Dead Files where Amy goes in and tells the restaurant owner, you've got to get off this land, because they also lived in the back and above the restaurant. So it was their home as well as their business. And everybody who came in there would get sick, or her father moved him out of hospice and brought him back to the house, and she says, basically, lady, he's just waiting on him to die, and when he dies, he's going to take his soul, and you're not going to see it. You've got to get him out of here. And that family didn't listen. Can you believe that, Steve? They stayed there. I mean, what do you need to hear?
Yeah, it's like, you ever heard Eddie Murphy's routine on that? How the people go to the haunted house.
Oh,
and it's
honey,
like,
that's a
get
beautiful
out. It's like,
dream
well,
house.
we got to go.
Yep. This is a beautiful dream house. Me and my sons do that one. Look at that. Finally, our dream, honey. Our big, beautiful house with all the bedrooms for the kids and a yard to play. Get out. Too bad we got to go. That fast, man. Get out of there. But she actually told them, now you can say what you want to say about producing a show. I know a lot of people that have shows, Haunted Files. I mean, Jack Kenna, Bill Bean, Steve's done stuff for movies and screenplays and stuff. I know a lot of people that have their hands in it. Of course, it gets produced and edited and things like that. But if you got to talk to Amy would tell you how long it takes. Sometimes she walks around the property for 3 days getting, pull on things. Steve really goes and, has a crew, and they go out and look at the history and things like that. I can't see him sitting in a library for 14 hours by himself. He's got a crew that helps, and there's a bunch of behind the scenes things. But that doesn't mean the things that she's picking up aren't true. Like, she would tell me, I've met her a few times. She actually has some of my jewelry and wire sculptures and things in her home. And that was one that bugged her. She didn't understand why these people, after everything she begged them, get out of this house, get your father out of this house. Anybody that comes on this property is in danger. People keep asking, are you sure I'm in danger? Yes, you are going to die. Get out of the house. And that's not where it's going to end. When you die, it's going to take your soul. You can't beat it. Black salt's not going to do it. You just have to this land is sour. You shouldn't be here. Nobody should be living here. But nobody wants to hear that, I guess. And I guess they just poo-poo it, and, and then that's it. That's all you can do. You can't drag them out of the house, But so many. Another one that really got to her was the Vasilla Axe Murder House. And that one, she was doing the same. And she told me, she said, Cisco, I sat there with that lady for hours and tried to convince her that you cannot keep having people coming through here. It was the mother of the children that was getting so irate and so mad over the years, and trying to keep gathering her kids. She says she keeps trying to gather her children together, and it's, I guess, how did she put it? Amy said it was like herding cats, for this woman to constantly keep doing this. But she's also got enough ability now where she can go from house to house. She's trying to get help to get her family out of there. And she kept saying something about bacon. I don't know the story all that well, but bacon was brought up a lot, whether the killer ate bacon or something. I don't know what it was, but it really irked the mom if anybody cooked bacon in the house. She told me all kinds of things. But the thing that got me the most was she said, Cisco, I spent hours with that woman, and we just locked heads, and she wasn't giving up that money coming in there for nothing. And the poor caretaker was the one getting haunted. It was crazy. But see, that's just it. There's some things that have such a power and such a malevolence toward human beings. You know, so many. Steve said a lot tonight, and so did Brian Bowden. Some things just don't like human beings, Steve.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is.
Because we have what they can't, which is either a soul or the gift of salvation or whatever, something, you know, that they don't have the freedoms that we have. They don't have any freedom of choice or anything. They're destined to be dark creatures, and whatever their lot is, that's all they can do.
Roseworthy seems to say something here. There was a slab of bacon left by the killer. Now, what kind of mess is that?
Yeah, it had to be a psychopath if they left bacon.
Yeah, well, like bacon caramel popcorn. All of my the chat listeners listening with us, man, we've really enjoyed that. I didn't make it tonight, like I said. I just got plain popcorn, but I hope you guys are out there trying that bacon caramel popcorn, because it really is so good. It really is. Don't make a lot if you're not going to eat it a couple days, because it gets sticky. But other than that, man, it is really, really good. Lazarus Project is saying, Cisco, I think it's the ancient evil that is the worst of them. I do too. I really do, because the thing is, it was here before us, and it's not going to, you know, mess around. And that's the one I've got in the book. It's an ancient soul collector. It also has, there are ones out there that have the ability that once they have a soul, they can actually, over time, use that, the essence of that energy of that person, to lure in other people, if that gives you a hint of what might be coming in the story. And those are, I agree with Lazarus, some of the creepiest things, because how do you fight something that's that evil and that methodical and that old? I think those are some of the scariest stories, Steve. I know people, you know, fear the Grim Reaper, like the song says, don't fear the Reaper, right? But, you know, because nobody wants to think about all that stuff, but for something to be that, you know, it's in biblical, it's in the Bible, it's, you know, the pale horse, it's in art going way, way back. So what Steve and I usually come to the conclusion on a lot of these things is there's a little bit of truth in every legend, right, Steve?
Oh yeah, there's that nugget, there's that impetus, there's something there, that the little pearl that everything wrapped around to make it into a full-blown legend.
Cheese balls. Did somebody say you can beat it with cheese balls? Is that what they said? Somebody said something about cheese balls and bacon. I'm hungry. I don't know about you, Steve.
Yeah,
but I'm
got
telling
a
you
steak
what.
waiting on me in there.
There you go. There you go. Well, I think we've run the gauntlet on it. The only thing I wanted to bring up too is about the birds, and I think that's just because they fly and they seem to be such free creatures, you know. That's something that they have that we want, is we would like to be able to fly away, but at one point in time it seems like we do get to be a little freer and our soul takes off, and where it goes, I don't know if that's individual or if there's a great big whirlpool of happy souls dancing around, Steve. I don't know what it is, but I'm just glad I got to spend my time here on Earth with this chat and you and loving family and learning about all this stuff. It's been a wild ride.
These Mondays are awesome. I really look forward to it.
It's been a wild ride, right, man? So you got to go eat steak, and anybody that wants to stick around, we are going to do part 4 of Cabin 22, and I guarantee this is a bang zoom whammy chapter, guys.
I won't be on screen, but I'll be listening in on my phone.
Well, you know we love you, Steve. You know,
love you too. Love all the people in the chat, all my friends and people here. Then I'll see you tonight at midnight.
At midnight for Ghost Stories at midnight?
Cat wants some steak. Yeah, Ghost Stories at midnight. Pacific
all right.
time.
And your books are doing great and they're everywhere. Are they at the Piggly Wiggly yet, Steve?
Not yet, but I'm waiting on it. As soon as that happens, I'm going to do a book signing at the Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, man, that would be awesome. That'd be awesome. I love you, my friend. What else is going on?
Don't forget, Gemma's book went live today.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
It was released
Beautiful.
today.
Woo.
Missing and the Faith Theory. Check
Way to
it
go,
out.
Gemma.
It will blow your mind. It's on Amazon in paperback and Kindle format.
We have to get her on talk about this.
Yep.
You know, we have to get her on talk about that book and everything else. Yep, Mr. Dickens, you can hear him, can't you? he knows. He comes up here and looks right into the camera. He knows what's going
Julie
on.
Doom, she says she was late, but you can always rewind after and listen. But listen to this episode of The Cabin. It's fiction, but it's based on true events. You'll love it. But I'll see you tonight, Julie.
You're going to love it. Okay, chat. Now, listen, everybody stick around because we're going to do it right after. I'm just going to play the outro, and we're going to let Steve go get his steak for his red meat.
It's wrapped in bacon around the edges.
Oh, my goodness. That sounds awesome. It just sounds yummy. But don't go anywhere. Good night, love. Love you so much, baby.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Good night, sweetie. See you next Monday.
See ya.
All right, stick around, chat. No. Hold on. Don't go away. How you guys put up with me and my technical difficulties, I swear to goodness. So here we go. All right. Where were we? Hey, Daryl, how you doing? Anybody that I didn't say hello to? I don't know any other show that does this. We end and then just get started. I don't know how we do it, but we do it all the time. Jilly Doon, stick around if you want to hear this story. Anybody that has not heard prequel and part 1, it is 2 Mondays back. I believe it starts with ghostly movies that got it right. So the prequel and part 1 is in there. The second one is Ghost Kids from last Monday, and it starts just like this right after Steve goes and gets steaks. And oh, thank you, Paradox, for the background. That's my actual living room. Don't you wish? Look at those windows and that big old book and those beautiful stone walls. Now this part from here up is all me, my little ghosts and all that. And of course this popcorn's real. So I make sure I shut off the microphone so you don't hear me munching on popcorn. What's everybody eating tonight? Does anybody have the Mrs. McGee's apple pie moonshine? I'm telling you, it's so good. For the kids, again, I'll say spider cider. Here's the trick. Put honey around the rim just a little bit with your finger and then put it in the sugar and brown sugar and cinnamon, or you do regular sugar. I use sugar in the raw and a little cinnamon. Hey, Conflict, how you doing, love? And I do the rim that way because you get a little bit of honey with it. It's so good. Oh, you're eating gooey butter cake, pancakes. Somebody's eating skulls. Who's eating skulls? That's hardcore, Oracles. Maybe she's telling us are you eating like cornflakes out of a skull or something like that? Because that's hardcore, man. Oh, just water tonight, Grey Wolf. Okay, you know what? That's good too. Oh, thank you, Daryl. It looks really cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I got a little fuzzy green screen. You can kind of see my mic here fuzzy. And like I said, I'm not the best tech person in the world, but we put it together with Scotch tape and spit just for you guys here. So, oh, I don't think I've ever had shepherd's pie. I don't know, but it sounds really good. Sounds excellent. Well, I'm going to do sweet tea and extra butter popcorn. And I've got my incense, I've got my candles, I've got my crystals, I've got the lights turned down low. Everybody got your candles on? Now, where were we last time? At last we left. There was a big explosion, wasn't there? Right? What happened? All we know is that the ghost of Ezra Perkins came walking out of the darkness of the cave and stood in front of old Skeeter Davis, who was drunk and chasing a old Buck the Rat, and it was kind of like a Moby Dick kind of thing. He just almost to his own, destruction, right? Chasing this rat. Now, I don't know what's happened to old Buck the Rat. We don't know. Whiz bang. Yep. And hey, Laura, I'm so glad you're here. And so the explosion. Now, Joan, the mother, one of the campers, has got her older son, Mike. But she's looking for... Yes, Mr. Dickens, come and say hi. We're about to get story time. Yeah, you're holding us up with yourself. Quit your yelling. So, that's when the explosion happened, and she realized that Jacob was gone, right? Now, Dave and Rage are coming up. They wanted to go fishing, and they hear the explosion, right? And they're almost there. They're kind of on the other side of the mountain, just have to go around the trail, right? And then George is shooting down the mountain after taking pictures of the Swanson's thrush for the Audubon Society magazine. He saw it through his binoculars. He saw Jacob chasing that rabbit, and the rabbit led him into a cave opening that was hidden with a door that was covered up with all this kudzu and vines, right? And he doesn't know what's happened to Jacob. He just sees him chase that rabbit and disappear into this cave. So he runs down the mountain to warn Joan, who he can see down at below him with the trail, and tell him that Jacob went in that thing, and then the whole thing blew. Okay? And I believe Jeb is back at the garage with a terrible hangover. He got scared to death. Something he saw, he was relieving himself out in the woods, and he saw something big and bigger than a man, and with a dog face, and kind of like a werewolf. He didn't know what he saw. He just ran, but it grabbed his truck and ran his claws down the side of his truck. Well, this guy, he gets so drunk when he goes back to the garage, he passes out at his desk, right? And wakes up with this horrible hangover, thinks it's all a dream. And last we saw, he went out and saw the claw marks on his truck, and then that's when he bent over and threw up, and all the fear came rushing back on him, and he just lost it as far as we know. And that's where we are. So tonight we're going to see what happened to everybody after this huge explosion. And old Sally, the still, blew up inside of this lockdown cave, right? Cherry sir, smoke some bacon. I wish I had some bacon right now. I'm starving. So here we go, guys. Part 4. Y'all ready? Of Cabin 22. This chapter is called The Reckoning. I hope you enjoy it. And name off how many Halloween things you hear throughout the story. How many have we heard already? We've got so many. We've got a black cat. We got a black dog. He's a good dog, though. We got a haunted cabin, a haunted mountain. We've got big old black things grabbing ankles and darting in and out of trees that just seem to disappear. Things looking in the windows and disappearing off of a big old deck where there was nowhere to go. What the hell is going on this mountain? Right? And what's that smell and all these voices coming through the radio, right? Wow, it's crazy. I don't know. I think all hell's about to break loose on this mountain. Grab a hold of your bacon, folks. Here we go.
Welcome to part 4 of the strange case of Cabin 22. The Reckoning. Joan and Mike were shaken by a blast from their left. The ground seemed to move a bit under their feet. A hot blast of air flew right in front of her and carried bits of rock and black smoke. She fell to her knees, grabbed Mike, and held on tight, covering him. What in the hell was that? She whispered to herself. She heard rock falling and looked up to be sure they were not under some kind of rock slide. The sound was coming from her right and to her front, up the trail a bit. She held on to Mike and started yelling again. Jacob! Where are you? And honestly, she was afraid to move. Dave and Rage heard a blast coming from ahead. A good bang and a slow rumble. Odd, he thought. There wouldn't be blasting here, would there? Rage barked in the direction, and Dave matter-of-factly said, I don't know, boy. Dave looked up to the mountainside above them, remembering the falling rock sign on his drive up, and instinctively moved to the other side of the trail. Let's go see, boy, but stay close. Rage did, and he himself felt the urgency rise inside him. As all the animals, he had an extrasensory feel in his bones. Lucky Dave was in the group of humans who pays attention to such things. They walked together around the turns of the path toward the direction of the loud boom they had heard. George felt the blast before he heard it. The rocks he was sliding down shook from underneath him. Then he heard it, the loud boom, coming from behind him. He stood up and did his best to see anything from that direction, but was blocked by the trees. Just a long stream of black smoke rose from the blue trail, and his new friend and her sons. George moved as fast as his 70 years would allow, and his heart beat with new motion. Tater rounded the corner of the old Perkins garage, where the dirt road turned to a gravel parking lot. It was filled with skeletons of old dark cars and a few older tractors. Farm equipment, pieces separated the pickups from the cars. An old tiller he used himself with his dad down on the farm and harvest echoed memories of the life he loved as a boy. His family, all gone now, working at this old garage and his caretaker job at the cabin is what he had left. He was an average mechanic, not as good as Jeb or old Bob used to be, but he was all right. He liked to work on older cars, not those new things with all the gadgets and those sensor things. Damn machines were robots, really. Not a meat and potatoes vehicle like a 65 Mustang or like that 1970 Challenger he got to help Jeb with last month. It was canary yellow, one with the black racing stripe. Pretty old girl she was, he said out loud to himself. He circled around the side that blocked his view of that old playground off the RV park. That place gave him the willies, and he avoided it like the plague. His little revved-up golf cart crackled its wheels on the gravel as he rounded the building. And there was Jeb, sitting in the same gravel, his head down in his hands and looking rougher than a raccoon gone 3 rounds with a mountain cat. Jeb jumped up when he heard the cart entering the lot and looked up at Tater, his hat in his hand and shielding his eyes from the sun. "Jeb, you okay?" Tater shouted. "What you doing in the ground? Did you fall or something?" Jeb rolled on his knees to begin the long climb to standing upright. Tater jumped out of the golf cart, barely coming to a stop, and he helped his friend up, brushing him off as he did, his 6+ frame blocking the sun on Jeb's skinny, almost stick-figure stature. Tater fawned over him like a mother hen and machine-gun questions to him all at once. "What you doing on the ground, Jeb? What happened to you? You look just awful. Are you hurt?" Jeb couldn't answer. He still swayed with the weakness of his hangover and his overwhelming fear. I'm okay, Tate. I just gotta get her inside. Gotta clean up. I gotta get inside." Tater grabbed Jeb up under one arm and bent down to grab the hat Jeb dropped while he was getting brushed off. Tater saw the puke, and then he saw the side of Jeb's green Chevy. His eyes widened, and he let out a scared, "Oh! Jeb, what happened? Oh, no! What's wrong with your truck, Jeb?" Jeb stiffened a bit and added, Ain't nothing, Tate. Got too close to an old tree is all. Get me inside, will you?" Tater walked his little buddy along toward the garage. Sure. We gotta get you cleaned up, Jeb. You smell like piss. Are you sure you're okay?" Boom! A loud explosion from off the mountain came loud and echoed a rumbling that sounded like that time that old factory blew up back in the 90s when he was a kid and all those people had died. Jeb stiffened up under Tater's arm, and he looked in the direction of the blast. They both saw black smoke start to billow over the trees. Jeb's heart fell. Jeb knew the direction well, and he felt what was left of his strength leave his body. He bent over Tater's arm and threw up again. Mr. McGee was working on the tail feathers of a huge eagle he was carving out of a redwood stump for his wife. He had saved this piece of fine wood for something special, and this eagle was it. The chainsaw, his wife called a noisemaker, covered the sound of the blast, and the rumble under his feet was lost to his concentration. Mrs. McGee felt it, though. In her kitchen, her good china started to rattle in the china cabinet, and her spices in the rack clattered together, and she steadied herself against the counter and whispered, "Oh my, what in the world?" and started to yell for her husband. "Charles! Charles!" Greta felt it too, reached over to turn down her audiobook and just listened. What was that? She thought out loud, and she touched the walkie-talkie in her apron pocket, thought twice, said a little prayer. George, are you all right? Over." "George!" She yelled into the device now. A crackle of static. She could hear a heavy breathing, and she listened intently. Finally, "Yes, Greta, I am okay. Over." "You're breathing, George. Are you running? What happened? Over." George steadied himself a moment. "Greta, I am fine, but there's some sort of explosion. An explosion in the mountain. I mean, a cave, maybe. Oh, Greta, I don't know. There was a blast, but I am fine. Over." "Oh, no. Were you close to it? Over." "Greta, it wasn't too far off. I'm okay. I need you to go to the lodge. Listen to me carefully. Go and call the sheriff. Tell them there was an explosion of some kind on the blue trail. The blue trail, Greta, do you hear me? Do you copy? The blue trail, about at a quarter-way marker. Do you understand? Over." Yes, George, I understand. You need the sheriff. Quarter-mile marker, blue trail, explosion, maybe a cave. Over." Yes, that's right, Rosebud. I am on my way down there now. Tell them come quickly. I think it was a cave-in of some kind. Greta, and tell them I think a small boy went in there moments before. Greta, do you understand what I'm saying? Over. Greta raised her hand to her heart as if the news of a child being hurt could make it fly from her chest. Yes, George, I understand. The sheriff and an ambulance too. Over. Yes, Greta. I need my hands now. I have to climb down. I am okay. I am going to warn the mom. I saw him go in with my binoculars. And I will call you as soon as I am down to the trail. Go now. Run, Greta. Over. Greta assured him she would. She was already out of the door of the cabin and quickly making her way to the lodge and the only landline close by. Yes, George, I am on my way. Be careful. Over. Greta. Greta. Pray. Over. I already am, George, she thought. Mrs. McGee was coming out of the office door when she saw Greta Steele running up the path toward her, waving. She ran to meet her. Are you all right, Greta? She asked as she met her friend. Greta tried to catch her breath. Phone. Sheriff. Explosion. Oh, no. I heard it. Where? How do you know? And saw the walkie in Greta's hand as they both started to run toward the office. George, he saw it. An explosion, he said. A small boy, he said, went in. Oh, we have to get the sheriff. Get the sheriff, she said through heavy breathing and fear. They reached the office and Greta threw herself against the counter and leaned toward the phone, walkie-talkie in one hand and holding her chest with the other. May McGee ran around the corner and lifted the receiver of the phone and dialed the number written on the wall in blue ink. Sheriff Cook's office, it read. It rang twice, and a friendly yet professional voice came over the line. Madison County Sheriff Department, Officer Nan Burnett speaking. Nan, it's May McGee, up at the cabins? Oh, hi, Mrs. McGee. What's the trouble? Those kids again? No, Nan. Mrs. McGee cut her off. Listen, I need Sheriff Cook right away. There's been some kind of explosion. Explosion? Where, Mrs. McGee? Off the mountain here, off one of the big trails. Okay, Mrs. McGee. Hold on, dispatching. Unit 4, we have a code 2 and a possible 10:30. Hold. Mrs. McGee, can you explain this again? Yes, a guest here at the cabins called his wife over a walkie, one of those walkie-talkies, and said he saw the explosion. Where, Greta? She looked at Greta, getting her breath. About the quarter-mile way marker on the blue trail. Said he saw a small boy, possibly, that went into the cave there, near the explosion. Okay. Yes, on the blue trail here, about a quarter-mile marker. Nan, he says he saw a small boy go in there. I don't know, but we need help quick, Nan. Can you send the sheriff? Okay, Mrs. McGee. I have help on the way. I will get Sheriff Cook, too. Joe Parker is on his way now. He's already got the sirens running. Stay on the line a moment. Nan ran around her desk and opened the door to Bill Cook's office. Sheriff, there's been some kind of explosion up at McGee's place. Bill Cook sat up in his chair, grabbed his hat in one hand, checked his revolver on his side mindlessly, and headed out the door. Danker, let's go, he called to the deputy. Anyone hurt, Nan? May says there may have been a small boy, went into a cave there, a cave of some kind maybe, and it blew. I'm still getting information, but Joe is headed on the scene. Oh, Lord, we're going to need extra hand. Call the EMTs and get search and rescue on standby. Will do, sir. Be careful, and please let us know, she called behind them. Unit 4, she called over the radio. Sheriff and Unit 2 en route. Getting EMT behind you. 10-4, ETA 10 minutes, Deputy Parker called back over the radio. Nan pushed the hold button. Mrs. McGee? Yes, I'm here. Okay, do you know if anyone else is hurt? I don't, Nan. I'm going to get Charles here, get the four-wheelers out. Is Sheriff Bill on his way? Yes, Joe is almost there. I have EMTs dispatched, search and rescue on standby. Thank you, Nan. You stay strong, Miss McGee. Call me if you need anything else, and tell Charles that too, please. Thank you, Nan. Greta and May McGee both went out to Chuck McGee, standing in a pile of redwood dust, and they told him what they knew. Is that all he said, Greta? Chuck asked. Yes, he's climbing down to where it happened, he said. Gonna warn the mother. Said he saw the boy go in through binoculars? May added. Joe Parker is on his way, Nan says, and Sheriff's right behind him. Okay, May. And he kissed her forehead. It's all right. We will figure this out. I'll get the four-wheelers out for the boys. Greta, can you get George on that thing? I can try, Greta answered. George, come in. Over? A pause. Greta? Heavy breathing. We're almost there. Over? She handed the walkie to Charles McGee. George! Chuck here. Are you okay, my friend? Yes, it is awful, Chuck. Stop running and tell me what you know. Chuck, Joan, and the kids on the trail with the boys. I saw the young one got into a cave or a hollow. I don't know if that was the place that blew up. The explosion I heard. I only saw black smoke. Chuck moved from the back of the lodge toward the opening of the trees, and he saw black smoke billowing in the wind against the blue sky. Okay, George, you stay safe and let me know when you get to the trail. He walked off from the women a bit, and his voice trailed. I'll wait for Joe Parker, and we'll be right up with the side-by-sides. Are you hurt at all? No, just in a hurry, Chuck, okay? And tell them to hurry. Get up here, that poor boy. Over? We will. Over. He handed the walkie to Greta. I know where he is. I'm gonna go get the wheels ready. You gals go make some coffee and stay calm. And stay by the phone. It's gonna be a long day. He kissed May and took off to the sheds and the 4x4s. He could hear Joe Parker's siren in the distance, coming up the mountain. Rage got to Joan and Mike first. She was so scared and distraught. Dave didn't need to get closer to tell that. Mike was yelling, Jacob! And they were looking all over. Joan, startled at Rage's running up. He's okay, ma'am. I'm Dave, and this is Rage. Can we help? Are you hurt? The smoke, black and nasty, billowed out of the cave, and Joan ran up. No, we are okay. There was this big explosion, and my son, he's only 6. He is missing. He was right here. I turned around, and now he's gone. Like one of those missing 411 David what's-his-name things. I mean, he just disappeared, and he isn't answering me. He was right here. I understand, ma'am. Please calm down and sit right here. He helped her to a rock off the trail, away from the smoke. Dave calmly said, Now, take a breath and start again. Where did you last see him? Joan explained, and Rage sniffed around and sat by Mike, who pet him without really thinking about it much. He had clear tracks of tears running down his dust-stained face. Joan went on, and Dave took it all in. Okay, he said, do you have anything of Jacob's? Something that he might have worn? Yes, his hoodie, but what? Don't worry, just please give it to me if you have it. She took off her backpack, felt around inside, and pulled out a faded red hoodie in a child's small, and burst into tears again. Dave took it from her and said, Thank you. Did either of you see anyone else on the trail? Hear a dirt bike or an RV, maybe? Joan shook her head no and looked at Mike, who did the same. "Sit right here, please." He looked toward his dog. "Rage, work boy?" Rage perked up and ran over to Dave, sat straight up, and looked at his friend. Dave said something in a language Joan didn't understand, and Rage jumped up into action on all fours and just breathed in the scent on the hoodie. "I'm with SARS, ma'am, out of Albany, New York. Rage here is a rescue dog. It stands for Search and Rescue. Rage will find your boy. He couldn't have gone far. Please just sit here and we will have a look. Take care of your mom, son, and stay here so we're looking for 2 lost boys, okay?" Dave looked at Mike and smiled, and Mike smiled back. "Rage, go!" Dave said, and Rage sprung into action. He sniffed around the area, picked up a scent, and moved through the bushes, like the wind, toward the smoke. Jacob crawled into a wonder of a secret, his eyes open wide with glee. A huge room yawned out of the opening of the tunnel. He could hear water dripping, and it echoed in front of him. He could stand up now, so he took the flashlight out of his mouth and looked around. A small slit in the ceiling shone a beam of daylight into the darkened cave. The boy looked up with the flashlight and could see bats hanging there. A few flew up and out of the opening in the ceiling, and he whispered, "Cool." He followed his light's beam around the cave walls, thinking there were some wicked hiding spots for pirate treasure in here. He remembered his pirate stories very well, and he knew there would be a possible skeleton guard. A pirate killed by Blackbeard or that Long John Silvers, maybe. Killed and left to guard the treasure for all eternity. Jacob said this last part out loud, swishing his flashlight in front of him like a sword. Just then, a large explosion came from the direction he had just left. He let out a scream and jumped away and landed on his back. Rock dust came from the tunnel he had just crawled through in a blast of hot air, and he covered his ears and looked up as more bats flew out of the hole above, and they flew all around the cave, screeching as they went. The tunnel weeped out dust and what looked like smoke. "A cave-in," he thought. Oh man. Jacob looked around with his light. Mostly just rock and maybe what looked like 2 other openings in the cave walls. They were dark, but worth a look, he thought. He was getting a bit scared now. The tunnel just caved in that he crawled through, just barely missing him. He had no idea what that bang was, but he had to find a way out, and he got up to check out the other openings. From the other side of the cave, he heard what he thought was laughter. "Don't be a silly baby. You have to be brave and find a way out of here," he said to himself. He heard it again, showing his light around. Nothing. Cracks in the rocks, a dead rat, spider webs as big as cars stretched across the walls. He bent down to try and see down the tunnel he had just crawled through, and it felt like heat and dust and smoke was still coming through it. He knew he had to get out of there. "Ma will be so mad," he frowned. He stood up and brushed off his knees and looked again. There was a huge puddle, a lake really. He thought the water was dark and smelled bad too. A Another laugh came. From where, though? And Jacob asked himself. All right, I hear you. You come out, he warned. Who's in here? The light's beam showed on rock walls an old dead thing, just bones really. A squirrel, maybe? He wondered. It hung off the edge of a rock, and its bone tail dipped into the murky water. A few bats still hanging upside down from the ceiling, some flitting their wings. This all started to creep Jacob out, like when Mike used to scare him jumping out from behind something in the basement laundry room, or telling spook stories in the dark till he wanted to cry. But he didn't. Mike would never let up if he did. He started toward what looked like his way out, making his way along the wall, away from the smelly water. I see you. And then that laughter. Jacob almost dropped his light, but steadied himself and showed it in the direction of the voice. A small girl in a white and blue dress was standing on the other side of the water in the back part of the cave. I see you, she said again. Jacob just froze and stammered out a few words. Who are you? You scared me. I am Coralie. Do you want to play with me? Jacob was shocked. Not now. I'm looking for treasure and another way out of here. Jacob said, puffing out his chest a bit, and remembered. I followed that rabbit in here. He showed the light around with no sign of the rabbit, and she laughed again. I don't see any rabbit, silly baby. The boy thought for a moment. Had I said that out loud? Shaking it off quick, he thought, do you know if there's pirate treasure here? Jacob blurted out, not really thinking at all. She said, mayhap I do, but I'm not telling. And she leaned towards him almost over the edge of the dark water and said, unless you play a game with me first. Jacob thought and stuck out his chin. Oh, heck, I don't have time for no games. Then I'm not telling, and crossed her arms. Jacob thought again. Oh, okay, well, do you know which of these tunnels takes us out of here? That one there is all smoky. He pointed the way he came. Sure, I play here all the time. If I show you, will you come to the playground and meet my friends? Wanting this to be so over, the scared 6-year-old said, oh, sure, I guess, just tell me. You have to promise. Cross your heart and hope to die. Jacob rolled his eyes and reluctantly did so. This was so stupid, he thought. And Coralie quick screwed up her face and said, that's not very nice. As if she heard him. And then she laughed. This scared Jacob even more, and he was officially no longer having fun. Coralie made her way around the cave's pool and sang as she did. It was creepy, he thought, and he made small talk as she did to try to push away the feeling. Hey, well, where? His voice stuck and he swallowed and tried again. Where is this playground? He managed. Just outside. It's our playground. Mine and all my friends, she said, and laughed the creepy little laugh. He almost thought, dumb girls, and stopped himself, and she looked at him and squinted in the flashlight beam. He quick tried thinking of something else. Hey, be careful you don't slip there, he called to her. She smiled a bit of a smile. I won't, I'm here quite a lot, and giggled. Where are your friends now? Jacob was getting a bit worried. He wanted out of this place. They're waiting for us on the playground. And Jacob just shivered. Rage ran right to the side of the explosion. Smoke wafted from above him, easing a bit up now. What you got, boy? Rage was digging at the fallen rocks. Dirt flew behind him, and Dave ran up and talked to the dog as if he were a partner and not a dog at all. Okay, Rage, is he there? The dog dug. Dave started pulling rocks. He noticed there was a plywood door covered in vines, burnt and hanging, and this seemed odd to him. He didn't know what it meant, but he didn't like it. He heard a yell. Joan! A familiar voice. It was George, out of breath and running around the corner. Dave stood up and went toward the trail. Dave! Oh, thank God! Listen to me! Joan joined them with Mike hanging onto her arm, still scared and watching intently. Dave, Joan, I was on the hill, bird watching, and he pointed and dropped his heavy pack. Breathless, he got the words out. I saw, through my binoculars, Jacob went in this way. He pointed, going by the landscaping he saw from above, and then noticed the smoke coming from where he saw Jacob disappear. His hope fell, and he added, I tried to call down, but you didn't hear me. Dave said, come with me. They all ran toward the cave-in. Stay back, Joan. Be careful here. She held herself together, worried, yes, but kept her grounding for Mike. Rage was digging like mad. Help me with this, George, Dave asked as they moved the rocks they could. Rage is on Jacob's scent. He hasn't laid down, George, Dave whispered to him. George asked Dave as they rolled the debris, and Dave told George he is a search and rescue dog. He has worked many fires, and we were in Key West. Our group went down there to help. If Jacob was gone, he turned around and whispered this part so he wouldn't let Joan overhear. Rage would lay down. I see. I called down to Greta on the walkie. Sheriff is on his way, and he's bringing help. Oh, that's great, George. I didn't think I could get Joan to go down for help. That's good news. Okay, help me with this big one. They both pulled on a large rock, and George looked to his side to find a branch to maybe help pry it. Dave pulled himself up and put his back against the rubble and pushed with his feet, and the rock gave way. Look out, Rage! Rage moved back and then started digging, and he was making progress and could reach up to his shoulders now. Dave and George did their best to move the rocks away for the dog. Dave heard Rage bark and heard a bit of an echo. Rage was through. Rage stopped, pulled out of the hole he had made, his nose covered in red clay and soot. Woo! Okay, Rage, you got his trail, Dave asked and reached for the hoodie and put it under his nose. Okay, buddy, you go. And Rage disappeared into the hole. Joan covered her mouth to stifle a cry, and Mike squeezed her arm.
I see you.
Jacob watched the girl with his light as she stepped into his side of the cave pond. She looked pale and sick, he thought, like that kid in his class who was always missing school. I can show you now. Follow me. But don't you forget your promise. This way, come on." And she led him down the tunnel to the right. He showed his flashlight beam ahead, and it was large enough to stand up in. Coralie walked ahead of him like she knew the tunnel by heart, and she ran her fingers along the wall as she did. It made him feel all goosebumpy, and he tried to find things to say. "How long is this tunnel? Does it go all the way out?" "Oh, it's not far. You will see the light in a bit around the turn." And she giggled again and sang that creepy song of hers. It gave Jacob the willies, and he tried to think of things to say to break away from the fear. Do you go to school around here? Is that where the playground is?" He managed to push out the words. "Oh, no," she answered. "I don't go to school. I got sick, and my ma didn't make me go anymore." She giggled as she spoke, and Jacob was running out of things to talk about and looked back down the tunnel they had just come back from, and where they had entered was much further away than he had thought. The tunnel's walls seemed to blur and move in and out like a funhouse hallway. It looked like the walls were breathing, and he felt fuzzy, and it felt hard to breathe in here. Scared, he asked more questions. How much further is it anyway? This seems so far." Coralie giggled. "Oh, it's not far up ahead here. Quit being squirrely." He turned back around, and his flashlight beam lit up the wall of the tunnel she was running her hand along. And then he realized the light beam, it went right through Coralie. Dave heard Rage bark once and felt like he was more to the right of the cave's entrance than further back. He touched that part of the rock and yelled, "Go get him, boy!" And Joan sat down on the ground, put her head in her hands, and cried. Dave and George pulled at the rocks they could move, and they heard a motor coming up the trail. Jeb ran into the garage, into the room his cot was in, grabbed at some jeans on a chair and picked up a t-shirt. Tater was asking him what he thought that explosion was, and Jeb was in no mood to answer questions. He quickly changed his shirt and wriggled into his jeans. Tater was what they called slow, and he usually had patience with him. He loved the old cars and worked hard, but there was no way he could bring him in on the secret of his daddy's deal. "We are just going to go have a look-see. Is there gas in that go-kart of yours?" "Sure is. Filled it up this morning." "Okay, you're going to drive me somewhere, and you ain't going to ask me no more questions right now, okay? My truck won't get far into those trails." "Well, okay, Jeb," Tater answered, and watched Jeb grab a set of keys off the board, and he followed him out to the golf cart. Jeb saw some black rags hanging out of the little cart storage trunk and yelled at Tater, "I told you, don't have them greasy rags laying around, Tate. They can cause a fire quick. Daddy never liked them laying around." Tater quick lifted the trunk, a scared look on his face. He hated when Jeb yelled. Okay, I'll take care of them, Jeb. I promise, Jeb. He jumped in the old golf cart. Now let's go fast, Tate. Step on it. Where we a-going again, Jeb? Tater asked as he turned the key. Get me to the blue trail, Tate, and hurry. Chuck McGee rode these trails all the time and knew right where Greta had meant. Deputy Joe Parker hung on the bar on the side-by-side four-wheeler like his life depended on it. Chuck bounced and laughed a bit, and Joe grabbed his hat, and the shovels and picks in the back rattle. There were 2 more of these little scooters, Chuck called them, back with May and Greta, all gassed up and waiting on the sheriff. Dave did his best to fit in the hole Rage dug, and he had pulled a few more rock from the opening, but couldn't fit all the way in. Chuck McGee pulled up the trail and jumped out with the deputy. George stood up and filled them in, and Deputy Parker would take down all the statements officially later. There was a kid possibly hurt here, and that took precedence. The deputy called into Sheriff Cook. It looks bad, Sheriff. Something blew up in here for sure. An old cave looks like. All, well, caved in. A child, age 6, seen by a witness to possibly be in there. Right before the blast. Oh, no further word. Oh, Lord, is all Deputy Joe could make out coming back over the walkie. Chuck got 2 picks and shovels out of the little 4x4, and they all started working on the rocks. Dave told Chuck and Joe about Rage, and they were all grateful they had a trained search dog on duty already. Dave worried for his friend, but knew if he had a scent, Rage wouldn't stop till he reached his source. It was what he was trained to do, after all. After Irma, when his Albany unit was sent to help in Key West, he lost sight of Rage for half a day in the rubble of a hotel there. When Dave and the rescue volunteers finally broke through the debris, he found Rage laying next to a woman that was pinned by a support wall, and Rage had sat with her for hours, letting out barks to keep those digging on course. 2 more motors were heard speeding up the trail, and the men kept at it, loosening rock and waving smoke away as they broke through. Sheriff Bill Cook got out of the side-by-side and made his way toward the commotion. Joan and George filled him in with add-ons from Deputy Joe. Bubba, grab a couple of those shovels out in the four-wheeler. Let's get this open. Everyone not ding it. Please stay back. Let 'em work. We don't need anyone else. He stopped and looked at little Mike's tear-stained face and changed his words. Anyone else lost up here? Damn it, McGee. What do you think? Kids pulling something up here in these caves? Has to be something on fire in there. All this black smoke. The smoke was definitely backing down, but still drifting through the rock spaces. I don't know, Bill. Hadn't seen anything up here in a while. Just people fishing and the like. Well, if this boy's in here, we're going to find out. Any chance there's another entrance? Is this one of the caves on your map, Chuck? McGee said, I have never seen this one. And the college and the Nature Society that mapped those out never had this one on the map either. Dave heard a distant bark, meaning Rage was still on the case. Chuck introduced Dave to Bill as the others moved back, but cleared enough space to start to swing a pick and get a better hold of a big rock there. Sheriff reached out his hand to Dave. Good to have you aboard, son. Sorry to meet under these circumstances. Dave shook the big man's hand and said, Same here. Didn't plan on reporting to work this soon, but glad to be of any help I can. Well, we're damn glad to have you. Search and rescue will be coming out of Huntsville. Nan has a bet on them being at least 20 to 30 minutes out still. Good, Chuck said, and added, at this rate, we might just get in there before then. Bubba yelled, Look out! And the rock gave way. Dust flew up and out of the cave opening. Joe turned on the beam of the heavy flashlight he had, and so did the sheriff, and light beamed through the smoke and down into a tunnel that opened into the side of the mountain. Joe coughed at the smoke and waved his hand and pushed forward. Got 2 more flashlights out of the four-wheeler and handed one to Dave. Dave moved rock from the bottom right of the cave and found a small tunnel off to one side. He showed the light into it and called out, "Rage!" He waited, and a far-off answer came back, "Woof!" And Dave smiled. Jeb was wishing he had a faster vehicle and repeatedly told Tater to step on it, will you? But the old golf cart Tater used to putz around the cabin's grounds was doing its very best. Jeb didn't know what had happened, but the direction the smoke was coming from worried him. He couldn't see the smoke now, but he just had to get a better look. Jeb touched the set of keys in his pocket now and thought to himself, Skeet said he packed that other truck and left it in the hiding spot on the east tunnel entrance. If there was anything up, he could get it, and the shine packed in it to the buyer. Man, Skeet, what'd you do, man? What'd you do? His heart sank even further as he knew the blast would have brought even more people than him and Tate toward the place he had kept secret all his life. "Step on it, Tater, please," he said, a bit more pleading this time. "Bubba, get that spotlight up here and grab that extinguisher too. There's some light ahead," Sheriff Bill called back. The men pushed forward. Joe yelled out for Jacob with no response. Dave was up front with Joe now, and he could see a slight flicker of fire behind them. Sheriff Cook, Chuck, then Bubba, last in line, and his 6'3" frame was having the hardest time of this part of the tunnel. George waited with Mike and Joan at the entrance, hoping the little crew would find Jacob and find him alive. Dave knew Rage would be trying to find him too. Maybe this led to where they were. The tunnel got lower, and the men had to hunch down more. And Joe pushed through and hollered back, "Sheriff! There's a cave in here! Bubba, pass up that extinguisher and some more lights!" Jacob swallowed hard. "That's not real," he thought. He ran the flashlight beam down to her legs and saw it went right through them. He held on to his fear and thought of the rabbit, just the rabbit, or anything but what he just saw. He was not a silly baby, he thought. He knew she could hear his thinking, and he had been in many a book before. He tried to remember the story, to think of anything but the light that was going through Coralie. How far now, Coralie? She laughed. And he thought of just running back or forward, of any way but staying here. He was scared now, officially scared, and wished he had never seen this old cave. Coralie pointed ahead at a sliver of light that showed ahead. The dust of the cave danced in the beams of light. Jacob's heart lifted a bit. A way out! The whisper excited him, but as light as wind within his own head. He was scared to blurt out words now. He was so close. "Follow me." Coralie started to skip now. "Come with me, Jacob." Jacob was startled. He had never said his name. Not once has he said his name. He followed as long as he was headed out of this mess. She could call him anything, he thought. The tunnel made a turn, and there was sunlight, beautiful sunlight, emerged in front of him and Coralie. It almost blinded Jacob, and he blinked his eyes. Coralie stopped in front of him and pointed. "See, I told you, silly baby." As she turned around and Jacob gasped and drew in the stale air, Coralie's face had changed into a bony gray mask, just like the skull on the pirate's flag. He was stunned and dropped the flashlight at his feet. Coralie, or the thing she had become, giggled and leaned into his own face. Breath that smelled like his hamster cage, and Mike's old sneakers took over his nostrils, and he wanted to puke. He fell back against the cave wall and glanced over her shoulder to make a run for the exit, back into the real world. There, standing in the opening of the cave, was 6 or 7 other children. They were shadowed figures, backed by the clean, bright daylight of the sun. One, a little girl, held a stuffed teddy bear, and she was dressed in rags. Half her face was missing. A taller boy stood with blood running out of his mouth that hung open in a silent scream, and his arm hung at his side, ripped open to the bone. 2 boys stood with him, their hands clasped together, with angry faces. The gaping wounds across both of their throats oozed blood down the front of their white shirts and little narrow black ties, and matched the red of their school uniforms. A bigger boy stood behind them. His head hung to one side, and it swayed back and forth and looked at Jacob with bulging eyes. An older girl, dressed in overalls and high-top sneakers, stood by him, her smile framed in the blood that ran from her head wound and soaked her long blonde pigtails to a tomato red. Coralie spoke, and Jacob's eyes focused back on her. "Remember your promise, little rabbit. Your promise to stay and to play with us. You crossed your heart and hoped to die." And she giggled, and the foul air from her breath made Jacob want to puke again. He was pushed up against the cave wall and was begging his feet to move, for his legs to run. But he was frozen stiff. He closed his eyes and turned away from her stench, and she took one bony hand and grabbed him by the chin, turned his face to look at her, and pinned him with the other hand on his shoulder. "Come and play with us, Jacob," he heard from the others behind her in the opening of the cave. "Come and play." If he could only run, make his legs move. He felt a long, warm stream of pee run down his leg, and Coralie laughed, opened her mouth, and drew in a deep breath close to his mouth. He thought she was going to kiss him, but she just breathed in deep, and Jacob could feel his knees weaken, and his head got fuzzy again. "Come and play with us, Jacob." He could hear them chanting, and he thought it couldn't be that bad. Wouldn't be that bad. His thoughts giving in to Coralie's breath and seemed to flow from him. He thought, and he could feel his legs no more. Bubba passed up the extinguisher to Chuck, Chuck to Dave, and Dave to Joe. Joe pulled the pin and aimed the spray forward and walked in as he did, now giving off little bursts of the foam. Dave walked behind him and saw small groups of flames and flickers of the orange light played on the gray walls. They both stopped there. Well, Joe stopped abruptly, and Dave ran into the back of him. Joe held up one hand in a stop motion as if he was the forward observer in the jungles of Vietnam. He stood and looked around a moment and whispered, "Holy fuck." The last of the word lost in the beginning of a whistle, low and solemn. As Joe reached up and took off his hat, and in a low voice let these words ease low from his mouth. "Sheriff, we have a situation in here." Dave looked over Joe's shoulder with his spotlight's beam in the small clearings of smoke that were dancing in the room. He could see what looked like centerfolds. They were plastered like wallpaper on one wall. The nudes' bodies curled and burnt upwards and still smoldering. One, Dave forgot her name, had blood splattered in jellied chunks sliding down her skin as a black ribbon of burnt edge creeped ever closer upward. Some looked untouched and smiling at what they too were seeing here. "Oh my God," whispered Dave as he moved around the part of the room he could see with the light. Joe was taking careful steps forward and calling back one-word descriptions. "Deceased, individual, male, middle-aged, I think," came words slow and deliberate, Joe's voice only shaking enough for Dave to pick up. But Dave understood. Sheriff called up toward the front of this line and asked, "What's that? Repeat, deputy?" Chuck looked back toward the sheriff. "Dead, middle-aged, says it's hard to tell." "What about the boy? You see any sign of the boy?" Sheriff Bill called up. "Hold on, it's hard to see. There's stuff all over the floor here, Sheriff." Joe took 2 steps forward and Dave could move into the cave a bit more. Dave shined his light downward. There was blood everywhere, glass and metal parts singed and strewn throughout. He could see what looked like a body laying in the debris. A man most likely, or used to be anyway, Dave thought. Maybe in overhauls. Burnt patches in the denim opened to holes deep in the skin of the man, like the jeans had melted into this man and became part of him. One leg Dave could see, as a slight wind moved the smoke, had blown back broken and rested across what used to be this man's chest. Joe's light beam played against the wall and made the dust and smoke look like it was dancing in the mayhem of the scene. And Dave caught what looked like an eyeball, complete with its optic nerves and stringing goo attached to the breast of a centerfold, with a piece of copper tubing it looked like. Joe winced and turned his light to the left. The smoke seemed to be being pulled away down another exit or tunnel. Joe called back, "Looks like another exit in here, boss," and took another step. The line of men all moved with him, like a macabre dance line in a bar's closing hour bunny hop, each man peeking over the guy in front and catching glimpses of a scene out of a Stephen King movie. Bubba asked the sheriff if he wanted him to call it in yet. "Let's wait and see what we have first, son. Let's find the boy if we can." And they waited as Joe, the forward observer in this squad, moved his feet carefully through the muck on the floor. Joe's light picked up what he thought used to be a still, mangled and smoldering, with little patches of fire still burning the fuel below. Joe hit them with quick bursts of the extinguisher. "Sheriff, we have what I think was a still." "I knew it!" Chuck exclaimed and patted Dave on the back of the shoulder. Sheriff reached up and pulled off his hat and said, "Damn it!" Nodded his head and patted Chuck's shoulder as if to say, "Makes sense," and tossed a look backwards toward Bubba, who looked down at the sheriff, still hunched in the tunnel, and he nodded too, all them looking like they all agreed with the final pick of a letter on the Wheel of Fortune game. "Few more steps in, Sheriff. Hold on a second," Joe called back, and Dave shone his light at the deputy's feet. "Look out," he whispered loudly to the back of Joe's head. Joe looked down and saw a pile of mangled and twisted goo, maybe a pile of rats on the floor. Joe almost stepped in it. "Thanks," Joe whispered back and shuddered. "Still blue for sure, Sheriff. No sign of the boy yet." Joe cleared 2 more steps and Dave and Chuck were in. The sheriff behind them was now getting a look, and the first thing he saw on the wall was the eyeball slowly sliding down the stomach of Farrah Fawcett. "Oh my God," he whispered. Bubba could stand up now and showed his mag light in. Beams of light moved all around the cave room, each revealing a new and more grotesque scene, like an old 8mm movie playing a massacre of the dead and dying. "Is he dead, Joe?" Sheriff called over to Joe, who was blocking his view of the man who was bent backwards over a crate table, it looked like, through the smoke. Joe showed his light on the man's face, or what used to be his face. His head was gone from the nose up. Red jellied goo poured from the opening where his skull used to be. "Oh, he's dead, Sheriff," Joe gulped, and handed back the extinguisher to Dave, who passed it to Bubba. Each man walked gingerly through the room, careful not to step in or on anything, as the sheriff said to do just that. "This here's a crime scene, gentlemen. Watch where you step, don't touch anything, and look for signs of that boy. See if you can get any ID off this poor sap," he added toward Joe, who was now the closest to what used to be Skeet. "And nobody yell out. We don't know how sturdy it is in here now." Chuck was looking all around the floor with his mag light aimed at what looked like ball bearings, gleaming red and surrounded by glistening broken glass and twisted metal in his beam. Mason jars stacked and broken among what looked like smoldering magazines and piles smoked on the floor. Dave really felt for Joe and tried to help him see by aiming his light where Joe was looking on the body. Joe reached in his pocket and took out rubber gloves and placed a hand in each one. Took out a pen light and placed it in his mouth and handed Dave his spotlight. He gripped what he thought were pockets and reached the plastic of the gloves, slipping it into the space soaked with blood. He looked up at Dave and shook his head. Nothing. He reached under the misshapen leg across Skeet's chest and down into the side pocket. There located something and pulled it out. A gold pocket watch. He looked up at the sheriff, who was standing behind him now, and the sheriff produced a Ziploc bag from his pocket, and Joe dropped it in. The pocket was empty now, and Joe felt around the back, reached in a back pocket, and pulled out a wallet. "Found his billfold, Sheriff," Joe announced. The deputy carefully opened it and looked for an ID. There was one, tucked where money would be if Skeet had any. Pulled out the plastic card and wiped the blood off its surface. A smiling picture of Skeet emerged black hair stringing off his face with 2 teeth missing right up front. Oswald Malcolm Davis, Joe read aloud. Skeeter Davis, that no account. I scared him off these trails more'n once. Chuck called back. Figures he'd be up here making shine. Hung with that old Jeb Perkins. He's probably in on it, too. Filed his daddy's old deeds, I'll bet. Sheriff Parker pulled out another plastic bag and opened it for Joe, and Joe dropped it in the wallet. Bubba saw a pile of crates and mismatched cushions along the back wall. Carefully moved a seat cushion that looked like one his granny had had on her sun porch, except this one had 2 fingers sliding down the faded flowers like they were trying to pick the blooms for a bouquet. No sign of the boy here, Sheriff, Bubba gulped. He could feel the biscuits and gravy he'd had for breakfast trying to make a hasty escape. Dave thought out loud, I wonder where that other tunnel leads to, and shone a light in that direction. Chuck said he didn't know. Curious, he added his light to Dave's, and they both caught a glimpse of another poster of a blonde girl with a bloody ear slowly making its way down her naked thigh, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. The ear let go and plopped onto the floor. Immediately, a huge rat with one ear half missing darted from behind a metal shelving, picked up the ear in his mouth, and ran down the tunnel into the darkness there. Dave looked at Chuck and almost wanted to laugh if it wasn't so damn wrong. Chuck made an oh well face and shrugged. Sheriff Cook took off his hat, wiped at his forehead, and shook the watch and the wallet Ziploc bags in his hand. Joe, leave the rest to the ME now. We got an ID. Bubba, you go back out and call this in. Tell him it was a still explosion. Fire's out. 1 adult male. DOA. Make sure that woman knows there's no sign of the boy in here, and we are going to continue the search in through here. And tell Nan to bring in search and rescue team. Joe, you come with me, and let's see if this tunnel goes anywhere. Bring all the lights, fellas. Bubba was darn glad to leave and made his way back out the tunnel and did as he was instructed. Joan, George, and Mike jumped up as he exited the tunnel, and he filled them in as best he could. The rest of the men left the gruesome scene behind them as they made their way down the dark tunnel out the back of the cave. Dave whispered out, Jacob? Rage? Tater took the last turn onto the blue trail, and Jeb's stomach was jumping with each bump. He knew he would chuck again if there was anything left in his stomach to do so. They made the turn and saw 4-wheelers parked along the trail, and a huge deputy standing by one of them. Turn around, Tate! Go the other way! Right then Jeb knew. He knew he had lost his daddy still. He had not taken care of business. He knew if his daddy was there, he'd have beat him plumb to death. He could hear his father laughing in his head, and it made him shudder to the bones. Jacob was frozen in the grip of Coralie. He could hear the other children still outside the tunnel chanting, Come play with us. Come play with us, Jacob. Come play with us. over and over like it was a song. Jacob felt lightheaded and almost dreamy with fear all around the edges, and he was doing his own chanting inside his head. Run, run, run. But his feet would not move. Coralie reached in to take another deep breath, and Jacob tried not to look. He squinted his eyes tight and begged his feet to move. He felt the air almost pull from him, like she was sucking the life right out of his body. Jacob reached down deep in his little mind and drew out a prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before... Coralie drew back and let out a hiss, and Jacob's eyes flew open, and he saw her look away from him. She still had him by one shoulder, but he could feel the ground beneath his feet again. Coralie was looking down the tunnel, and Jacob heard a blood-curdling growl. Coralie let Jacob go, and he dropped to the ground, landing on his knees. He was staring down the dark tunnel he had walked up with Coralie. He crawled backwards till he hit the tunnel wall and looked up at Coralie, who was hissing at the darkness of the tunnel. Jacob was stunned and doing his best to get up and run, his legs not quite back enough to do so. He heard another growl come from the darkness and watched as Coralie stepped backwards. Just then, a dark shape emerged from the shadows. A huge black dog baring its teeth and moving forward with deliberate steps. The dog broke into a growling, barking mix that lit up the tunnel with echoing chaos and broke into a run straight for Coralie. Coralie retracted backwards, holding up her hands, and added her own scream to the echoing turbulence. The dog landed on Coralie, and in mid-fall backwards, she simply disappeared. Without seeming to notice, the black dog picked up its stride and began to growl again towards the opening in the cave. Jacob turned his head to see, and the damaged children were raising their hands to protect themselves and let out screams of their own. The dog broke into a run, and Jacob watched as each kid faded into nothingness before his very eyes. Jacob brought his little hands to his mouth and screamed in them. The dog stopped his running, more like trotted over now to where the children were, and sniffed the ground there, wagged his tail, and turned back toward Jacob, who was one complete shiver at this point, shaking to his very shoes. His mind was whirling at what he had just saw, and he was so scared. He wanted his mom for sure, and he had no idea where he was. The large black dog looked at Jacob, tipped his head to one side, and slowly walked toward Jacob. Little Jacob pushed himself against the wall, whispering, "No, no, no more, please, no more." And Rage walked slowly up to him, bowed his head a bit, and sniffed the air around Jacob, and his tail began to wag. And he gently nudged Jacob's leg with his nose and sat down in front of him. Jacob, realizing this dog had just saved him, whispered, "Thank you." Rage sat up and leaned in. Jacob winced back a little, and Rage licked his face, reached down and took a hold of Jacob's pants leg and pulled gently. Jacob came back just a little bit then. This was a good guide dog, he thought. And Jacob pulled himself up and steadied himself with one hand on the tunnel wall. And Rage reached in and pulled his pant leg again, walking backwards toward the tunnel exit. Okay, boy, I can follow you. I'll follow you. Rage moved right next to Jacob, and together they walked toward the daylight. Dave walked with Joe, Chuck, and Sheriff Cook down the dark tunnel, and they came across large box fans hooked up to car batteries along the way. One right by the cave exit had blown over, its back mashed in, but the fan kept going and scraping its sides of the casing in a screeching sound, and Joe reached down and yanked the wires off the battery, and it died with a thankful They had quite the setup, didn't they? Sheriff Cook said. Sure did, Joe answered. Probably been running Shine out of here for years, Chuck added. Sure doesn't look good for us, does it, Parker? No, sir. It sure doesn't. This had to open up soon if they were running an exhaust system here, Dave added. Rage went in, trailing that boy up at the entrance at the main opening, and this feels like it's moving away from that. This could lead anywhere, boys. Some of these tunnels go on for miles out here, Chuck noted. They turned the corner as Dave finished, and up ahead was a wash of daylight through tangled vines of kudzu. The men moved quickly towards it. They could see the light streaming through, and Sheriff nodded towards Joe, and Joe proceeded kicking out the entrance, and the men pulled at the vines until they were outside. Dave stepped out of the hole and looked around. They were off the side of the mountain, just barely on the edge of a cliff, and he looked down at a drop-off leading into the thick trees below. Clever some bitches, Sheriff Bill said. Let's go back, boys. End of the line. Jeb told Tater to take him around the other side of the trails toward the thick woods, and Tate knew. He'd get that truck and sneak out at dark and never come back here. He knew that old sheriff would get him this time. He was still mad he didn't get him for boosting cars back a couple years ago. Caused me all kinds of worry, he said out loud. What, Jeb? You okay? Tate asked. Just drive, Tate. Dave, Chuck, Sheriff Cook, and Deputy Parker emerged from the cave opening. George, Joan, and Mike were sitting in one of the four-wheelers, and Bubba was talking to them. Joan saw the men and jumped up hopefully, and Sheriff Cook shook his head, and she sat back down and started to cry. Dave said, "Let me check that tunnel again," and he and Joe went back to the cave's mouth, and Dave shone a light and yelled, "Rage! Rage!" He waited. Nothing. He knew not to give up hope. Search and rescue would be here soon, but he had no idea where this tunnel ended up. I just don't know, Deputy. I know these things can go on for days. What is he, 6 years old? That's what I was told, Joe said and hung his head a bit. Dave stood in the clearing between the cave and the trail where the four-wheelers were parked. Threw his head back and looked around the top of the rocks the cave was hidden in. scanned the trees, and looked toward the sky. Rage! He let out a yell that echoed off the rocks, and he felt spent and worried now. Joe walked up and put a hand on his shoulder. You did what you could, man. You did what you could. Woo! Dave swung around and looked up, shielded his eyes from the glare of the sun. Off to the right, through the trees above them, came another woof! Rage! Dave yelled and ran in that direction. He got a better hold on where the bark was coming from and looked above them toward a rocky ridge, and stepping into view was a beautiful black dog with a little boy holding onto his collar and sucking his thumb. Tater pulled over where Jeb had pointed. Okay, Tate, I need you to go right back to that garage. Talk to nobody, do you hear? We were never up here. Tate nodded, and Jeb slapped Tate's hat and knocked it down over his eyes. I need you to focus, Tate. Do you understand? Tate straightened his hat back. Yes, Jeb, I understand. Talk to no one. We was never up here. Jeb smiled a bit. That's right. I need you to stay down the shop and finish that John Deere for old Hampton. Parts are on my bench. It's an easy fix. You can do it. You got me? Jeb raised a hand, and Tater flinched and put up his hand. I got you. Clear, Jeb. Finish Hampton's tractor. Tate frowned. Are you okay, Jeb? Tate was worried for his friend. Jeb wasn't much of one, but he didn't have many. Not since old Bob died. Jeb revved up now, pulled himself out of the golf cart. Don't you worry on me, Tate. Just do as I say. Anyone asks, I'm sick in the cot and taking no calls or new work today. All right? Jeb leaned in the cart with one arm over its hood, looked long and hard at Tater. I mean what I say. We were never up here. I'm counting on you. Take care of business. Tater, I'll be back late tonight, and we'll go in town, get us a pizza and a six, okay? Tater smiled and fixed his hat straight again. Okay, Jeb, I will. Not too late, Jeb. That place scares me after dark. Okay, Jeb? Jeb agreed. Not too late, Tate. Slapped the hood of the golf cart and added, Go on now. Straight back, Tater. Tater pulled off and left Jeb in what looked like the middle of nowhere. Jeb watched him till he couldn't see him no more, and then looked up toward the cliff. A small stream of smoke lofted out of the opening toward the tunnel above, and Jeb stepped backwards deeper into the tree line and watched, wondering how bad it really was. You know that good-for-nothing, worthless friend of yourn, blue old Sally. He wasn't taking care of business, and it's on you, you little shit. His father's voice came through loud and clear in Jeb's head. He crunched down further into the thicket of the wood line and looked upwards again at the back tunnel that came off the Stills cave. Smoke that black had to be serious. Sally was gone, all right. Jeb reached up and took off his hat and held it to his chest. Oh, Sally, he said, almost tears in his voice. I should have never left you with old Skeet. It's all my fault. Just then he saw movement on the cliff by the tunnel's opening. Looked like somebody was kicking or covering down from the inside. Jeb huddled backwards again and pulled a leafy branch around in front and watched intently as deputy, looked like that Deputy Parker, and some tall guy he'd never seen, pushed out of the tunnel and stood there looking around. Oh, no. There came Chuck McGee, and there's old Sheriff Bill Cook in his tan uniform and his big old cowboy hat. Jeb didn't move. He knew it was over now. He is done for. Sally's gone. Skeet probably in cuffs somewhere by now, and all his girls he'd never see again. The cases of shine lost. Oh, Sally, oh, Sally. Jeb wanted to cry. Don't you flinch, you sissy boy. Don't you do it. I won't, Daddy, Jeb said this part out loud, squeezing and twisting his hat in his hands so hard he'd like to rip it in half. Rage! Dave called, and his friend barked back. Pride and relief welled up in Dave so fast he could hardly believe it all himself. My God, Joe whispered and put a hand on Dave's shoulder. My God in heaven, look at that. Deputy Parker burst with happiness and yelled out, Hey, Sheriff, look! Everyone turned to see what Deputy Parker was pointing at, and there on the rock ridge they all saw it. Big black dog with a very dirty little boy who was sucking his thumb. Jacob! Screamed Joan, and she jumped out of the four-wheeler so fast she almost fell, and Bubba caught her with one big arm and almost hugged her as he did. We will go get him, ma'am. You stay here. You'll get hurt climbing up there. Mike yelled too, Jacob! He was truly grateful to see his little brother, that he burst into tears. Chuck looked up and said as he took his hat from his head and held it to his chest, Sweet Jesus in the morning, look-a there. Well, I'll be dipped and fried, Sheriff Cook smiled. That's one hell of a dog you got there, son. And he whacked Dave on the back as he gladly gave out orders for his deputies to get up there and bring that boy down to his mama. With a huge smile, he added, Bubba, you call down to Nan and tell her to call off search and rescue. I'll be dipped, he added, and smacked Chuck on the back now. Dave yelled up to Rage to hold and gave him the hand signal to boot, and Rage woofed and sat down next to the boy, whose grip right now was so tight on Rage's collar he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. He saw the people down below, but he just stood there, not saying a word. He just stood there, and right now, to Jacob, standing was good enough. Jeb waited till the intruders went back in the tunnel before he made a move. I gotta get that truck out of here, that Skeet loaded. I'll wait till dark and roll her halfway down the road before I even turn her on. Be police moving all over here most of the day, I reckon. I'll just wait 'em out. Jeb pushed through the brush and felt a sigh of relief when he caught a glimpse of the camouflage-covered truck, right where he had told Skeet to keep it. Least he got that right, he said out loud to no one. He moved around the back and lifted the camo nettings cover over the side of the truck bed. He could see the cases of shine lined up in their cases, and like dollar signs formed clear in his mind. Good man, Skeet. He thought quick and covered her back up, patted the truck, and ran round to the driver's side door, took out the keys, and unlocked her. This was his old 1075 Silverado. A beauty she was, original blue paint with white panels running down her sides. 454 big block she was, purred like a bobcat. She'll get me where I need to be, he thought. I got a few hours to kill till dark, he said to himself. He leaned across the seat, popped the button to the glove box, and rattled his hand around inside. Oh, hell yes! He pulled out a sleeve of saltines and a can of Vienna sausages, and took out his old pocket knife and eased back in the seat, satisfied for the first time today. He leaned down on the floor, the passenger side, and looked at half a case of mason jars. Why not? Jeb smiled and reached for a jar. A little of the hair dog to bit you. And he laughed and he choked on a bit of cracker in memory. He sat up straight and remembered the dog thing that clawed his old Chevy almost got him the night before. Wasn't far from here, he thought, and suddenly Jeb wasn't as comfortable staying out here till dark. He reached over and pushed down the lock on the door and slid down the seat, opened the jar and started to drink, for different reasons now. From the thickness of the woods, something big breathed in deeply, and a set of green and hungry eyes focused on a human scent not far up the wind, and a low growl formed in its throat, and it too waited for nightfall. You have been listening to Part 4 of The Strange Case of Cabin 22, The Reckoning, an original story by Cisco Murdoch. What waits for Jeb in the woods of this mysterious mountain? Will Jacob recover from his run-in with the ghost of the damaged children from the cave? What has been stalking campers and haunting Dave and Rage in Cabin 22? Tune in to Part 5.
Well, there you go. It seems that Rage saved Jacob from the... Can you give me a 5-5? You guys can hear me? I think I got my mic turned back on. Anyway, I almost fell asleep myself, man. I gotta say, out of the whole book, there's a lot of, you know, your special moments that you just absolutely loved. And I look back and I said, did I write that? You know, my whole thing, I absolutely love the whole back and forth. Oh, cool, 5-5s. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, everybody. The back and forth with Skeet and the rats. You know, he made that, what he called a widowmaker, you know. And he made it down at the garage. You could just see him sitting there with his old greasy black hair making that thing, probably not helping out much around the garage and stuff, you know. Made that widowmaker because he was going to show Jeb that he could keep the cave, you know, clear of rats and everything. And I don't think it was that. I think it was because he enjoyed that, killing those rats and pulling back on that and hitting it square right in the eye. Bam! You know, whoomp. But I think that whole thing with old Buck was very Moby Dick. You know, if you ever read that, how Captain Ahab got so caught up in catching that white whale that he, to his own destruction, and not just his, but he took other men with him, and the whale got the best of him in the end. Well, there's one of Reckoning, right? That was the name of the chapter. And, oh, good night, Jackie. Thank you so much for coming in. And Rage coming over the hill with that little boy. Just, you know, he looked up, big, beautiful black dog with a very dirty little boy standing next to him, you know. And Rage saved Jacob. And that was probably maybe Coralie's Reckoning. We don't know yet. Rage had something that those ghost kids didn't like, and they just vamped out of there. It's like, just That was it. They were beat. They were beat by pure love, and that dog just, I mean, what could be more pure than an animal just protecting something, right? And that poor little boy, I mean, my heart, I can't listen to that part without just about jerking a tear, because he's given up. He's got no feeling in his legs or his feet, and this thing has got him and is sucking the breath out of him, the very life out of this little boy. And he turns in his mind, and he just turns to something he had been taught his whole 6 years of his life from his mama. Now I lay me down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul to keep. Just a little simple prayer with all the faith a 6-year-old boy could have, and the love of his mother, and everything that's going through his mind. And he just almost lets go. It says this little prayer. And it's enough. At the same time, here comes what he doesn't know. A savior in the form of a dog. That was just enough. Just enough. For her to let go or grasp just a little. He's getting a little feeling back in his legs. And this poor kid is dropped, against this cold cave rock wall. And he watches this scene before him that nobody should ever have to see. These ghost kids, and they're all damaged children, and they're ghosts, and they're obviously they left the earth in a bad way, and caught in their death state, right? So now we've got earthbound kid ghosts, right? We've got old Skeet blown to smithereens. We got old Buck the Rat getting his reckoning on Skeet and taking his ear, slides down the the centerfold on the wall that's on fire, and the old Buck comes and grabs the ear and runs down that dark hallway, that dark cave, exit, where all the fans were for their makeshift exhaust system and stuff. So now we got Jeb in the woods hiding. What's he there for? What did he take those keys for? Remember, he took the keys off the thing in the garage when Tater took him away in his old golf cart, right? And so he dropped them off and made Tater swear not tell anybody where he was. Tell them if they come by that I'm in the garage, and I'm sick, And Tater's gonna listen. He's gonna go down to the garage. We see what happens then. So part 5, guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening to this. Thank you so much for everybody listening and picking out all of the Halloween things that came up with, all those different things, the bats, everything. From good job, Patriot, there, and Roseworthy picking up on how it went from dark to light, and dark to light, dark to light, dark. And we still got a ways to go. Part 5 is probably the same length, and then we've got part 6 is really in 2 halves. So we still got about 6 hours more to go on this story. I don't know what's going to happen on this crazy mountain, but it's Halloween night. Dave's on vacation. Rage is so far, he's a hero, right? And we finding out old Chuck's pretty cool, and Sheriff Cook, and Joe Parker, God bless him, he had to dig into those nasty pockets, what was left of them, and found a gold watch. And we know it's Skeet dead in the cave, and now everybody knows it, except Jeb, who's sitting in his truck. Oops, sorry guys. Sorry. Who's sitting in his truck under that camo netting, all loaded up with moonshine, and he's going to wait till dark is over and try to sneak out of there in the morning past all those cops, at least to the wee hours anyway, because all the cops are hanging out at the explosion in the cave. So we'll see what happens after this. I hope you all come back next Monday. Me and Steve are going to do Mud Name Madness, and I don't know what that'll be. Oh, that's with Connor. Bigfoot Anon's going to be on. We're going to talk about Bigfoot and portals and dimensions and things like that, because that might just be coming up in this story. It's long way from being over, folks. Thanks for taking this crazy ride with me. I appreciate you all. Jilly Doom, good night. Good night, Patriot. Good night, Lazarus Project. You're fine. I'd love to hear your ideas. Let's talk about it. Patriot and Anon pulling out all them Halloween things. Thanks again, Roseworthy and Courtney and Carol and everybody that came in. Peta. I'm glad everybody got their bacon. Grey Wolf, good night. Good night, Laura. She's probably asleep. God bless her. And I love you all. Thank you for sharing this story with me. Thank you for enjoying it. Thank you for appreciating the characters for what they are. And I think you're going to find there's a lot more characters to come. You haven't met everybody yet. So hang in there with me. Can't wait to do this again next Monday. And I think I'm going to make bacon popcorn next time because I'm starving. Good night, everybody. I love you. One more outro and we are out. See you next week. Oh, we got Bill Bean, I believe, Wednesday if he's not getting a demon out of somebody. And so he'll be on Wednesday as a thing in between because I got to catch him when I can. He's very busy these days. I can't imagine why. And next, well, I'll get back with you on Sunday. We've got, I forget who I think maybe Peter's coming. And then Monday with Steve and part 5, okay, of Cabin 22. Thank you all. And good night, everybody. Sleep well. Keep your closet doors shut. Keep your feet under those covers because there are things that go bump in the night. Good night.